The afternoon sun shines on Danzo's table, and a conspicuous thermos cup shines on it. Cough. I didn't expect that I would live a life of soaking goji berries in a thermos at a young age. But elegance never goes out of style. Pour the water soaked in the thermos into the goblet on the table. He gently picked it up with his hand, shook the reddish liquid in the cup, and drank it in one gulp. After the warm liquid entered his stomach, it moistened his tired body little by little. Recently, more and more spies have been lurking in, so that even he, the vice captain of Anbu, has to work overtime at night. This is the result of the shadow clone. But even if he uses the shadow clone, his fatigue will not disappear, it will only be delayed. Who knows how strange the eyes of the aunts and aunts near my home are looking at him. Before entering the house, I was full of energy, but after leaving the house, I felt drained. You must know that he still has to go to class as the class teacher during the day, and he used to be able to catch fish from time to time, but now it has become a problem. However, even if Anbu and the security team were dispatched with all their strength, there would still be a few spies who slipped through the net, and those spies who couldn't escape from Konoha would always think of killing each other and breaking the net, causing chaos to help those spies who could escape. The detonating charms hidden on their bodies usually cause great harm to the residents of Konoha, and many residents' lives were taken away by them. This is simply an unsolvable situation, so now he can only come to class with two panda eyes, making the students laugh a lot, and he is also full of kindness, and said that today's homework is doubled. I heard that the eyes of many Uchiha clans have turned red recently, as if they are about to become stronger. Danzo just wants to laugh at this, because he just stayed up late and worked crazy overtime for many consecutive days. Eyes are red and bloodshot, it doesn't matter if it's not red. However, because of these spies, the relationship between Anbu and the security team has improved a lot, and they have the same enemy. The so-called friendship between China and Japan depends on a third party, right? After sending off the last student, Danzo also sorted out the materials and prepared to go home. The night gradually enveloped the entire sky, and dim streetlights rose on both sides of the road. This is considered to be the outskirts of Konoha village. Most of the foreign civilians settled here, and the Orochimaru family was no exception. On the dark dirt road, the family walked towards their small house talking and laughing. Mom and Dad, I got number 1 again. Look. This is a prize given to me by the school teacher. The young Orochimaru happily held up a bag of candies, and showed his spoils to his smiling parents. Afterwards, he took out a few pieces of candy from the bag and handed them to them, looking at them expectantly. It's amazing, it's so sweet. His mother looked at her pride lovingly. Since Orochimaru was admitted to the ninja school last year, his talent has added a lot of smiles to this slightly poor family, giving the family a bigger future. His father tried hard to maintain his serious face, but he couldn't hide the smile on his mouth. Well, you did a good job this time. But you can't be proud, you have to keep working hard, you know? Aha! Orochimaru looked at his parents, grinned, and nodded happily. On the other side, a team of spies from Yin was fleeing in this direction, and behind them Anbu and the security team were frantically chasing and killing them. The gentle evening wind blowing on the Yin spies only made them feel a burst of coldness. There were 5 spies in the fleeing team, but only 2 were left here. They were able to escape to the present, not because of how fast they ran, but simply because the 2 of them ran faster than the 3 dead people. Running here desperately from the place where they were checked, they already felt that the chakra in their bodies was gradually decreasing. But sensing the strong wind coming from the pursuers getting closer, they couldn't help but feel a wave of despair. Using the last few detonating talismans, they barely opened a distance again. Suddenly, in this relatively desolate suburb of Konoha, they saw the Orochimaru family walking on the road, and they were overjoyed. If they were lucky, they might be able to escape. The image of escaping from birth flashed through their minds, and cruel smiles appeared on their faces, because no matter whether they could escape or not, the family below would definitely be killed by them. Who are you? The man walking on the outside of the road was the first to notice the 2 strange men in night suits rushing towards them, and he turned sideways to protect his wife and children behind him. And his wife hid behind him and hugged Orochimaru tightly, and the 3 of them faced them with fear. There are 3 people. We only need 2. When a little closer, a Yin looked at the 3 people in front and said to his accomplice. He grinned, licked his lips, and said with a bloodthirsty face, "Kill that man." He nodded, took out a few shurikens from the ninja bag and shot them away. Facing the shuriken, a look of despair flashed in the man's eyes. If he avoided it, his wife and children would be behind him. If he didn't avoid it, he would surely die. Thoughts turned in his mind, but his legs didn't move half a step away. At the moment when the ninja was struck, he silently closed his eyes, opened his body, and prepared to face death. Orochimaru pushed his mother away, trying to remember a ninjutsu taught to him by Mr. Danzo. His fingers trembled slightly, and his hands kept forming seals. Sealed, failed. Sealed, failed. As the seal failed again and again, my heart was extremely flustered. I closed my eyes, and a sentence that Danzo repeatedly emphasized in class sounded in my mind. Ninja, you have to think calmly at any time. He opened his eyes again, forced himself to calm down, and stared at the shuriken, only the last chance to seal it. Finally, the chakra in his body was successfully mobilized by him, and a gust of wind blew out from his mouth. Wind escape big breakthrough. Most of the incoming shurikens were blown away by ninjutsu, but he had too little chakra after all. A shuriken passed through the strong wind and stuck on the man's shoulder, but he was already full of luck at this time. The two sand-hidden spies saw that their shurikens were successfully blocked by a child below, and they were not angry but happy. This is a genius of Konoha. In their eyes, the value of Orochimaru has surpassed those two ordinary people. As long as they kill him, it will be a great achievement to go back. But now he still has value to use. First use him to get rid of the pursuers behind him. The rough hand stretched out to Orochimaru. The chakra in his body was exhausted because of the ninjutsu just now, and he was powerless to resist. Orochimaru's parents tried desperately to stop them, but they were cut down with a knife in their disdain, and fell to the ground, not knowing whether they were alive or dead. His face is full of fear at this time. No matter how good he is in the future, he is just a ninja school student who has not even performed a single mission. What's more, the life and death of his parents who love him are uncertain at this time. The pressure on his small body can be imagined, and his mind is on the verge of collapse. Facing such an enemy, being able to do this to this level can be said to be far beyond that of his peers. Two people stood beside him. One of them stepped on his body with muddy feet. The clean clothes his mother had washed for him were all black, and the sand-hidden spy inserted sharp kunai into his immature arms with a smirk on his face. Obviously, he wanted to break Da Shiwan's tetanu first. No matter how talented he was, he would be powerless to resist if he couldn't seal. Having attended the class, he knew that fingers are an important way for ninjas to mobilize their chakras. After he cut off his tendons, he would no longer be able to be a ninja. The family and the dream, two things he cherished so much, were on the verge of being shattered in a short period of time. Under the package of despair, his small body trembled slightly, his eyes were closed tightly, his face was pale, and he was powerlessly waiting for their verdict. The sharp kunai pierced Orochimaru's skin and pressed down little by little. At this time, he only felt a burst of coldness all over his body. Even if his wrist was bleeding, he couldn't feel it. When he was young, he wished that there was a big hero who could repel those bad guys when he was in danger, but now. You guys. What do you want to do to my students? A word containing deep anger rang in their ears, and the hairs on their backs all stood on end, and the combat intuition trained in many missions was sending out signals frantically. Danger. Danger. Extremely dangerous. As an excellent spy ninja, even if his body froze for a moment, he reacted almost instantly when he heard the sound. The kunai in his hand flew out immediately, and the figure retreated violently. The sharp kunai did not cause any harm to the comer. We're afraid we're in big trouble. Such a mask. That's Konoha Onbi's evil spirit. A sand-hidden spy recognized Danzo's Onbi's identity and said with chattering teeth. But seeing that the companion beside him didn't answer for a long time, he turned his head and saw that the one who had done the most cruel thing to Oshimaru just now was sitting on the ground. His pants were suspiciously wet. No one understands the power of the title Anbu evil ghost better than them. The seemingly holy mask hides a heart like a devil. It is said that they spent several excellent spies' lives to find out some of his methods. For the spies who just performed the mission and did not cause other casualties, he will give them a happy, but for them like them who have already hurt Konoha civilians. Skinning, beheading, car splitting, all 5 punishments, lynching, hanging, cooking, castration, cutting, needle insertion, burial alive, poisoning and other tortures. Just listening to the name is already unbearable. Even the toughest man will be tortured to the point of collapse. What makes people even more desperate is that he doesn't care how important the information you have is, and he doesn't care whether he says it or not. As long as he hurts civilians, what awaits you is life rather than death. Orochimaru moved his fingers slightly, and found that he could still control his whole body, slowly opened his eyes, and propped up his body with all his strength. Black hair blowing in the wind, wearing a mask to make it difficult to see his face, standing like a strong bamboo, standing proudly with a knife and broad shoulders, bringing an unparalleled sense of security. Is Anbu a ghost? Why does it look so similar? Before he finished speaking, he passed out. Orochimaru's body and mind were already extremely exhausted due to the excessive use of chakra, and it was entirely due to a will to be able to faint until now. When he fainted, he always felt that handsome back was somewhat familiar. Looking at the family lying on the ground, after stabilizing their breath of life, Danzo raised his head and looked at them, feeling a breath stuck in his heart, staring at the two people in front of him. Are you ready to die? A cold voice came from under the mask, but anyone could hear his monstrous anger. The wooden knife also seemed to feel the master's emotions, and kept making a knife sound, as if longing for the blood of the two in front. Seeing that they couldn't escape, they also became ruthless, and their murderous aura condensed on them. At this moment, as elite ninjas, they regained their original pride, and their fingerprints flew. Wind escape fire walk. The combination of the two ninjutsu already has the power of a level ninjutsu, and they rushed straight towards Danzo. Hey, it's interesting now, tomorrow is here, no one will allow it. Putting it horizontally in front of the body, the armed color quickly covered the blade, watching the ninjutsu they released with eyes like a tiger. One sword-style tiger hunting. The light blue chakra gathered into a giant tiger, and rushed towards them. The king's aura was beginning to appear, and every hair on his body was clearly displayed. With the help of anger, he truly displayed the demeanor of expert-level moves. The cloud follows the dragon and the wind follows the tiger. The two powerful attacks collided, and as the two clashed, the giant tiger tore it apart in an instant. After a slash, the two knelt down on the ground. Upon closer inspection, there was a faint bloodstain on their wrists. Repay him in his way. Danzo put the knife back into its sheath, and stepped forward to remove their mandibles to prevent them from committing suicide. This kind of death doesn't even have time to react. If it ends so quickly, it would be too cheap for them. After finishing them off, Anbu, who was disgraced by the explosive talisman, finally caught up. Hello, Vice Captain. After calming down a bit, he said to his subordinates, wait a minute, the three people on the ground will be handed over to you. Remember to pay compensation according to the system. Their medical expenses will be deducted from my salary next month. They looked at the three people lying on the ground, especially a child, and felt a little guilty. If it wasn't for the fact that Vice Captain Shimura Danzo happened to be nearby, the current civilians might have turned into corpses. Roger that. But the name of Danzo's vice captain itself is representative of Konoha's safety. Seeing that their coats were also covered with wind and dust, the tiredness on their faces was already visible to the naked eye, and the words they originally wanted to say were swallowed back into their throats. He sighed heavily. You have worked very hard, too. At the youngest age, working in the darkness and serving the light, this is the purpose of their department. Only those who travel through the night can know the danger hidden under the bustling appearance of the day. If one is not careful, a colleague who was joking 1 second will turn into a corpse in the next second. Anbu is the department with the highest death rate in Konoha's peacetime period, vicious gangsters, hidden rebellion, and hard-to-find spies. Go? Does it match? The ragged cloak. War? War, with the humblest dream. They were dead long before the world knew their names. Use the hottest blood to extinguish the fire of evil. Only after death can they have the honor that should belong to them. After disposing of the two sand-hidden spies and returning to Anbu to go through the accumulated official duties, the streets of Konoha were empty. Danzo looked up at the time. It was late at night. After being busy so late, after muttering something in his mouth, he went straight back home along the familiar path. Seeing the room glowing with warm orange light from a distance, he unconsciously smiled. Sure enough, he didn't sleep again. What a worry-free brat. Gently pushed open the courtyard door and shouted into the room. I am back. Xiao Zilai, who was mopping the floor in the room, also heard his voice, dropped the rag in his hand, and trotted over on the wooden floor with a thud-thud-thump. "Brother Danzo, you're back." As soon as the door of the room was opened, the small face showed an expression of excitement, and a tiger pounced from the room to the approaching Danzo. He caught the little Jiraiya who was flying towards him, and hugged Danzo tightly with his small body, saying nothing. Even those in the ninja school have heard that the nearest Konoha village is not peaceful, and enemies from other villages often lurk in, and Danzo, as the vice captain of Anbu, is on the front line of fighting danger. The real bet with the god of death. Whenever Shimura Danzo quietly walks out of the house at night, he can't fall asleep. He always sleeps on his side and stares at the door with worried eyes. Only when his elder brother is by his side can he fall asleep as a young boy. You must know that he is the only family member in Konoha. If Shimura Danzo cannot come back one day, then he is an orphan without a home again. Danzing sighed in his heart. Ever since he became sensible, he was always afraid that one day he would disappear. Fortunately, he discovered his psychological problems in time and solved part of them. I really don't know how Zhi Nai wandered in this world alone in the original book. How many bitter tears are there in the heroic laughter? You long Angelica sea, the sea does not welcome me. The fallen leaves are rooted, but the leaves do not welcome me, the three immortals. Yunhi should return to heaven, but heaven does not welcome me, immortal Miaomu. The tiger returns to the mountain, but the mountain does not welcome my hero. The mountains and the sea belong to one, and if you don't welcome me, you will come here. Since I have recognized Jiraiya, this somewhat stupid Odudu in my life, I will not let him read this poem before I die. Slightly lowered his head for a glance, but found that Zhi Nai had already closed his eyes and fell into a deep sleep, but his little hands were tightly grasped, and with a curse in his heart, he opened the door lightly again, and walked into the room slowly. The next morning. Why do I, as the class teacher, open the door so quickly on weekdays? Danzo yawned with two big dark circles under his eyes, and walked towards his house with a wobble. The gate of the ninja school is opened by every employee of the school in turn every day. For the Danzo uncle who has the spirit of getting up, it is really outrageous to open the door too outrageous. The ghost knows how many alarm clocks in his home are broken. Anyway, when I go to the watch store to buy goods, I always take them home box by box, but they always feel that they are not durable. The boss grinned when he saw him coming. Holding the bread in his mouth, half asleep and half awake, he swayed to the gate of the ninja school. As for Jiraiya, still asleep in bed. But why does it look like there are people at the school gate in front? No one is so early, right? With a hint of doubt, he walked forward quickly, and a small figure was standing at the school gate. He watched Danzo approaching. Compared with the back that he vaguely saw before he fainted last night, he was secretly sure, and said to the visitor with kindness and gratitude in his eyes, "Hello, Teacher Danzo." "Student Orochimaru, why did you come to school so soon? Besides," before he finished speaking, he looked at the bandage still wrapped around Orochimaru's arm. You know, he just encountered a life and death crisis last night, and Danzo had already thought about asking for leave for him in front of other teachers today, and it seemed that his physical condition was not very good. Orochimaru raised his bandaged hand indifferently, indicating that there is no major problem. The impact of last night's incident on him can be said to be unprecedented. There was a great possibility that his parents would die due to excessive blood loss, and he was afraid that it would be bad luck. He hated the feeling of being powerless against the enemy last night very much. The way they looked at their prey made Orochimaru, a young man so proud that he could even be said to be conceited, feel extremely glaring. He needs to become stronger. Be strong and strong. He is confident that with his 5-attribute chakra talent, he will be able to learn all ninjutsu in the ninja world. Only in this way can he protect everything he cherishes. Then I have to rely on the towering ninja school in front of me to accomplish my goal. You must become the man who stood proudly with a knife last night, and can scare wolves into dogs just by his name. The man should be so. Danzo didn't know what Orochimaru was thinking in his little head at this time. After touching his head, he took out the key and opened the heavy door. Two people, one big and one small, walked in together. With the passage of time, the students gradually arrived, and whenever they saw the future of these Konohas, Danzo always felt a sense of accomplishment. Open the roll call board on the podium. Orochimaru, Jiraiya, Hitaki Sakumo, and Nahina Kase. He stood up timidly, nodded towards Danzo, and then sat down. This should be a youthful age, but looking at the conspicuous imprint of a caged bird on his forehead, Danzo's hands were itchy, and he made a note of the Hinata family in his heart. I have to say that the quality of the students in this class is really good. After only 1 year of teaching, they have basically mastered the 3-body technique, except for some people who are extremely partial. Thinking of this, Danzo couldn't help but look up at the seat by the window in the back row of the classroom. In addition to Matt Dai and Jiraiya, there was also a young boy looking out of the window boredly, with the name Kurama Ryong written in black pen. It should be influenced by the family, and the enthusiasm for illusion is extremely high, but the results of ninjutsu are simply a mess. Well, no matter what, he is always their class teacher, and he writes down the questions of the students in a small notebook in his heart, and plans to come to the students' home visits when he has free time. By the way, I also went to visit my old captain. I heard that he was forced by the family to marry a wife. It can only be said that they really worked hard for the continuation of the pommel horse blood illusion. I have to comfort him well. Teacher, what do you want from me? Ah, this. As soon as Danzo walked into Hokage's office, he was taken aback. The normally meticulous desk was covered with piles of documents, his smooth chin turned into a beard, his eyes were bloodshot, and his dazzling silver hair was scratched like a chicken coop. He had never seen his teacher look like this. Silently picked up the scattered documents on the ground, all of which were dyed with a line of red, which made Danzo's heart skip a beat. Only the most urgent documents at the border would use red-headed documents. Under such a document, everything is kept simple, and anyone who stands in the way can be killed. But after a hasty scan, there were dozens of documents like this, and then thinking of the teacher's appearance, a low pressure gradually enveloped the small office. You guessed it too, right? Tokima rubbed his temples with his fingers. Now his brain is almost a paste, and all kinds of data about the enemy in us are frantically deduced in his mind. No matter how he calculates, he feels that his chances of winning are slim. Unless thinking that he still had the last resort, he felt a little more relaxed. Since the beginning of this year, conflict documents from the border began to increase. Combined with the information from the Anbu, it was vaguely guessed that the pace of war was getting closer, but they still didn't expect them to be so anxious that they couldn't even wait for this year. I sighed in my heart. Fortunately, my own system has already been implemented. Konoha is not without the possibility of victory. Lifting his head slightly, he saw Danzo, who was packing up the files for him, and felt a warm current in his heart. Logically speaking, as the shadow of a village, I can't lose my composure no matter what, but this time it can be said to be more serious than Uchiha Madara's incident. The big tree protecting the village fell, and I can rely on myself. Can I really do it myself? Can you really protect this village? For the first time in his life, Qianshu Feijian, who always showed his identity as a calm and wise man when facing any problem, fell into confusion for the first time in his life. In the past, no matter what, he followed his elder brother shoulder to shoulder. Although his elder brother was often unreliable, his force value was really full of security. Standing up from the office chair, he beckoned Danzo to come over, and the two walked together to the wall where the huge ninja world map was hung. Generally speaking, there is a rock hermit in the northwest, a cloud hermit in the northeast, a fog hermit in the due east, and a sand hermit in the southwest. As for Sand Yin, according to the news from Anbu, Sand Shadow doesn't really want to fight this battle, but they will naturally not refuse the fat meat offered to them. But as long as one punch hurts them, Konoha only needs to face the other 3 villages. There is a country of vortex in the direction of Wuyan, and they need to cross the sea. All of this will take time, so you can let it go for a while. The most threatening to Konoha are Union and Yanyan. These two need to send heavy troops to stand ready from the beginning. The only question is whether it is possible to move back to the east line of defense immediately after the Sha Yin is hurt. Hit with one punch, avoid 100 punches. The total number of Konoha ninjas has grown to thousands of ninjas so far, and the total force is much higher than other ninja villages. If nothing happens in a short time, then they can be candidates for the command of the First Army. The Nara family can be used as one, and he can also block one side, and now at least one general is needed. Senshu Feijian thought carefully, turned his eyes away from the map, and suddenly saw Danzo beside him. Can't help but shine in front of my eyes, maybe I can trust myself as a disciple. Although it is not very clear, there are many secrets hidden in him. According to his own analysis, He is very likely to have a lot of friendship with the Lord of the Black Shadow Mercenary Group, a well-known mercenary organization in the ninja world. Perhaps, we can start from this aspect. Sorry, Danzo, this is the last time to cheat you. Danzo seemed to be studying the map in front of him carefully, but he was actually looking at the panel that emerged. Heavens and Worlds Mission System Host. Danzo Shimura. Chakra. Wind, 9.9 calories. Strength. Elite Jonin points. 125000. Bloodline. One Piece World Family D Inheritance. Wind Swordsman Yasuo, Elite. Skills. 1 Sword Style Tiger Hunting, Expert. 1 Sword Style Swallow Return, Elite. 3 Body Technique, Expert. Wind Escape Great Breakthrough, Expert. Wind Escape Wind Slicing, Expert. Vacuum Series, Elite. Shenfeng Wying, Proficient. 3 Color Domineering, Elite. Illusion, Elite. Sealing Technique, Expert. Navy 6 Forms, Elite. Return of Life, Expert. Items. Indestructible wooden knife, some fine steel kumai, some military food pills, some detonating charms, Sombra mask, healing potion, Zhuge Liang's feather fan, Hulk's underwear, Gandalf's wand. Task. Smash the attacks of Hidden Cloud, Hidden Fog, Hidden Sand, Hidden Rock. Mission description. The village raises dozens of ninjas, and today is the Festival of Righteousness and Death. Reward, 100,000 points, unfinished. Just when he looked away from the panel, he saw Tokima looking at him with piercing eyes, and couldn't help but feel the hairs on his hands stand on end. Old teacher, what's the matter? He took a step back calmly, swallowed and said. Senshu coughed twice, looked squarely at him and said, Danzo, go and inform all the patriarchs of Konoha's families for a meeting, as well as the civilian ninja committee. Yes. After Danzo gave the order, he turned into a breeze and disappeared into the office, directly bursting out at his fastest speed. Now, every minute is precious. And Tobirama organized his appearance in the office, especially at times like this. The more he had to show his composure. Morale was also an important factor in war. The entire Konoha turned into a fighting machine, and everyone became a part of it. The breath of chill swept the entire ninja world. Those small countries seemed to have heard some news and began to martial law one after another. This time, Konoha turned into a rabbit. However, rabbits can also kick eagles. The border has already been clashing with swords and soldiers, and the two sides of the enemy have already turned their eyes red. Yesterday this stronghold was pulled out, and tomorrow that stronghold will be destroyed. The civilians are full of panic. Is such a hard One Piece about to be shattered like this? In the 16th year of Konoha, the tailed beast balance system established by the first generation of Hokage officially announced its collapse. In the conference room of the Hokage building. Everyone, the current situation is like this. We have been targeted by 4 hidden villages at the same time. As the analyst announced the data of the enemy and the enemy one by one, all the people present were sad, and the chances of this battle were slim no matter what. Sitting between the 1,000 hands sitting in the main seat, watching them all dejected, he sighed secretly in his heart, stood up, put his hands on the table, leaned forward full of oppressive force, scanned the circle with sharp eyes, and said loudly. Everyone. We are not completely hopeless in this battle. After everyone heard it, they raised their heads and looked at Tobirama. Since the famous Hokage dared to say that, then there must be his way. Seeing that the morale of the crowd had recovered a bit, Fei Jian couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. Relying on his past reputation, he finally managed to get away with it. But it can't be said to be a fool, at least if there is no other way, I may have to use that technique. The ninjutsu that was reprimanded and banned by my elder brother. The reincarnation of the dirt. After discussing the number of family ninjas with the family patriarchs, everyone left to mobilize the ninjas of their own families. Only Patriarch Nara was left behind. As a well-known wise man, he couldn't be fooled by him. Besides, he was going to be a frontline commander. Others didn't need to know the battle data, but he had to. On that day, there were discussions in Hokage's office from time to time. A series of plans were written by the two of them, then scrapped, and planned again. The sun sets and the moon rises. After an unknown period of time, the lights in the office are slowly turned off, and the battle plan that has cost both of them a lot of effort is ready. After the blessing of the two and countless shadow clones, it can be said that all the information that is beneficial to one side has been counted, and the odds of winning can be evened out. After the Nara Patriarch walked out of the Hokage building, He looked up at the cloudless sky and sighed in his heart. You can only do your best and obey the destiny. If you want to swallow Konoha, you have to see if your teeth are hard enough. 3 days later, in the morning, the mighty army of ninjas was assembled, and cart after cart of supplies was pulled out of the village. The ninjas who escorted the supplies set off a day earlier to clear all obstacles on the marching road in advance. All kinds of bandits and thieves entrenched on the road were eliminated one by one, and the plan should not be delayed because of them. As a frontline commander, Danzo stood in front of an army of more than 1,000 ninjas who were ready to go. With his close-fitting armor, he looked even more heroic, and looked confusedly at the battlefield he was about to go to. Can I defeat the enemy and bring back those who believe in me behind me? An unspeakable pressure is on the shoulders of Danzo. They are the children of their parents, the partner of the one they love, and the heaven of a certain child. Brother Danzing, you must come back safely. Xiao Zilai also climbed up the tree and shouted at Danzing. Orochimaru, Tsunade and all other students stood beside him, and also shouted at him. Teacher Danzo, you must come back alive. We are still waiting for you to come back to class. These little bastards. The familiar voice made Danzo turn his head and saw the hopeful faces of the children he had taught. Isn't he also their Sky? Wipe away the tears caused by the wind and dust with his hands. His eyes are no longer confused, and his whole body exudes a terrifying aura like a peerless magic weapon. Everyone, listen to the order. Danzo glanced around the dark ninja army and gave orders. Turn around and take one last look at your loved ones. They obeyed the order and looked towards the village entrance behind them to see off their loved ones, looking at them with worried eyes. They were the ones they cherished. We have no way out, our homeland is behind us. We must use swords and blood to make them remember. Those who dare to plunder our homeland for survival will only die. Each ninja looked at his family with reluctance, and Danzo sighed softly. This is already the maximum authority he can do. It can only be said to be a damn war. Now, go. All the ninjas had slightly red eyes. After this farewell, I really don't know when we will see each other again. Maybe one day, I will turn into a pile of Lois. As their commander said, they had no retreat from the beginning, and the war can only be stopped with blood. This may be a road of no return, but they must go. They have no choice. The ninjas who can go to the battlefield are at least low-level ninjas. Thanks to the economy of the Fire Nation, everyone has sufficient equipment and food. The figures of the ninja army shuttled rapidly among the big trees, leaving behind phantoms. Everyone only brought 3 days of dry food, in order to use the extreme marching speed to catch the enemy by surprise. This is the first appetizer for the enemy that Danzo and Tobirama discussed. Ordinary tactics are no longer suitable for the current situation, and we can only hope that the sword will take the lead. This tactic is flash. Electricity. War. Danzo, on the other hand, rode toothless and planned to eliminate some of the sand-hidden teams that broke into the border defense line before the arrival of the army. With their destructiveness, it is unknown how many civilians were injured after a day. Their mission is to disrupt the Nation of Fire. With the speed of Toothless Boy, Danzo is sure to reach the border within half a day. At the same time, the border forest. According to the intelligence from the spies, we have already removed 3 strongholds. I have to say that their strongholds are really well placed. With the strength of our 3 Junin and a dozen or so Chunin, it would be so troublesome. Talked with a team of sand-hidden ninjas who broke into the land of fire. Captain, there are still 2 strongholds that have not been pulled out. After the task is completed, we must leave quickly, otherwise Konoha's army may come. At this moment, a sand-hidden ninja suddenly exclaimed, Captain, my perception found that there is a team patrolling the border at 4 o'clock in front, and the number is about 10 people. There was a cruel light in their eyes, and they looked at each other and smiled. In an unknown dense forest, a team of Konoha ninjas carefully patrolled the area near their stronghold. Captain Yi Yu, there are several strongholds that have not been contacted these days, will it be? One of them ninjas ran and increased his speed and asked their captain. Although he didn't finish speaking, everyone present understood what he meant. At this juncture, there is no connection like before, and it can only be said that the possibility of tragedy is mostly. Each border stronghold will be equipped with a ninja to deal with emergencies, and the 3 lost contact strongholds have been stationed at the border together for so many years, and they all have a general understanding of each other's strength. It can be said that there is not much difference in defense between them. If even they can't stop them, then they themselves can't beat them either. After not receiving their news, Yantian Yeyu was going to lead some ninjas in his stronghold to find out the situation. Make an agreement with the ninjas who stayed behind. If they don't come back for more than half a day, they will immediately report to the village that there are a large number of enemy village ninja activities on their border. Walking halfway, he suddenly noticed a different chakra breath approaching rapidly, and he didn't hide it at all, or in other words, the enemy didn't even bother to hide their strength. Countless thoughts flashed through his mind, and Yi Yu raised a hand, signaling them to stop and be on guard. If they can determine their position in this way, then the enemy must have sentient ninjas. Even if they run, they won't run too far, so it's better to stay and fight. Get your equipment in order, we're afraid we'll be in big trouble. Facing the direction where the enemy was coming, he picked up a few kunai from his ninja bag, with detonating talismans wrapped around them. Hearing the captain's words, everyone looked dignified, each prepared their equipment, and looked at the dark depths of the dense forest with concentration. If they could be valued so much by the captain of Konoha Jamanin, then they might die here. Coming. The detonating talisman kunai in Yantian Yeyu's hand shot directly at the person who came, and then his fingers flew, followed by a burst of fire, and the sound of the explosion mixed with smoke filled the surroundings. Are you dead? A Konoha ninja swallowed, and looked nervously at the smoke. The people present did not answer him, because they were also watching nervously. It's dangerous. Konoha's bastards. A gloomy voice came out of the smoke, and as the smoke cleared, a huge earthen wall suddenly appeared there. After a while, the ninjutsu dissipated, and dozens of enemies came into view of the Konoha ninja team. Their pupils shrank, and they didn't expect so many enemies. This time I'm afraid I'm really going to die here. I'll just accept the heads of you guys. A sand-hidden shinobi licked his lips and said with a grin. It seems that this is another wave of military exploits. Everyone in Sha Yin looked at Yi Yu and the others as if they were prey. The Konoha ninjas looked at each other, remembering their last appearance, and they could be regarded as having a companion after death. Determination flashed in everyone's eyes, pulling out the kunai and bullying them. Kill. For a while, there was a fierce fighting sound in the area. Near the border, Danzo and Toothless were soaring in the sky to see if there were any enemies breaking in on the ground. Suddenly, Knowledge Color Baki noticed that there was a loud explosion in the distance, so they flew towards the place one by one. It's still a respectable opponent. The Sand Hermit ninjas were all wounded, and most of the Konoha ninjas had already fallen to the ground. Only Yantian Yeyu panted heavily and looked at the surrounding sand ninjas. He no longer has chakra on his body, and his thighs have been scorched by the fire escape, and now he can barely stand up. Looking at the subordinates who were lying on the ground, either dead or injured, a flash of death flashed in his eyes. He moved kunai to the neck, and was about to swipe. Damn it. A chilling cry came from the sky, causing Yi Yu, who was about to commit suicide, to stop his movements. A faint blue fireball rushed towards sand-hidden ninja exuding high temperature. The extremely high temperature made their faces change, and they retreated one after another, looking at the sky warily. The sun's rays made them unable to see Danzo clearly, and asked cautiously. Who is your excellency? Danzo pulled out the wooden knife and jumped down, standing up with the knife horizontally. Konoha Hidden Village, G. Village, Group, Hidden. After a pause, he added, it's also your god of death, you all dance for me, ha ha ha. Although they have heard of Danzo's name, they have broken through several Konoha strongholds in the past few days, and they are extremely swollen at this moment. Thinking about it, Shimura Danzo should not be much stronger. Do it first. Wind escape breakthrough fire escape luxury flame. Tuden Tuliu cut all of a sudden, more than a dozen ninjutsu slammed at Danzo together. Although some ninjutsu attributes were incompatible, their power should not be underestimated. Yantian Yeyu, who was already lying on the ground, closed his eyes, and when he was done, another one died. This place is beautiful, and it is not bad to use it as a tomb. Wind barrier. The smoke gradually cleared, and there was an angry voice. MD. Dare you let me successfully pretend to be 13? You don't talk about martial arts, right? Then don't blame me. The blade turned over, and the armed color quickly spread up. Step forward and chop. The light of the sword turned into a ray of breeze and shuttled through the crowd of sand ninjas, killing those who had just released ninjutsu one by one. Their reaction speed could not keep up with Danzo's sword at all. The momentum of this sword is getting stronger and stronger. In an instant, more than a dozen sand hermit ninjas clutched their throats tightly. There was a faint bloodstain there, and after a while, blood flowed out from between their fingers, and then fell to the ground with wide-eyed eyes. Idiot. All the sand-hidden ninjas watched the people around them fall down, shocked and angry, and one sand-hidden ninja retreated a little bit behind him with his eyes flickering. They followed these 3 Junin for the purpose of gaining battle merit, especially now that as long as they go back, they can exchange a lot of battle merit. 3 strongholds are enough. While all the Sha Yins were clenching their teeth and rushing upwards, he exploded with all his chakras and retreated violently. On the way back, a cruel smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Sorry, my colleagues, let me enjoy the glory with your lives. I will pay homage to you. The sand-hidden ninjas noticed that their companions had escaped, and a trace of anger flashed across their faces. As sand-hidden ninjas, even if they died, they had to choose honor. A black shadow flashed across the sky, and Toothless Boy looked down at the fleeing figure in the forest below, his pair of long eyes showing human-like contempt. Even it is extremely contemptuous of this kind of person, it just swooped down and grabbed him and flew into the sky. After throwing it up, a mouthful of dragon flames roasted him, turning him into charcoal and falling into the forest. And those hidden sand fell down one after another like a knife cutting a wheat field. Yi Yu, who had closed his eyes and waited to die, opened his eyes again, looking at Danzo like a murderous god in surprise. Finally safe, he looked at his subordinates who were still breathing faintly, with a heartfelt smile on his face. After solving the sand-hidden ninja team that invaded the border, Danzo brought the injured ninja back to their stronghold according to the stronghold map. Thanks to the vitality of the ninjas, most of them can survive after receiving basic medical treatment in the stronghold. Those who were seriously injured were transported back to Konoha, such as Tiantian Yeyu who was seriously injured. If they dragged on, they might lose their legs. And those ninjas who have died can only be cremated nearby and take the ashes back to their families. This is already the best explanation for the dead ninjas at this time. In the next 2 days, Danzo encountered several groups of sand-hidden squad who had successfully invaded the Land of Fire. While destroying them, his heart was already covered with dark clouds. I didn't expect the border problem to be much more serious than I thought. This is a relatively easy sand-hidden line of defense, if it is Yanyan or Union. With a slightly heavy heart, Danzo rode Toothless to the front camp where Konoha was fighting sand-hidden. Since the major ninja villages launched the attack on Konoha, the defense lines in various places have established their own headquarters, so as to support them in the crazy attack of the 4 major ninja villages. But it's just trying to support it. The Konoha ninjas on the front line of Sand Shadow have no control over the initiative in the war and can only be beaten passively. This is based on the fact that the 2nd-generation Sand Shadow Samana does not want to fight. This ninjutsu research fanatic said that it has nothing to do with him who hit you. This werewolf, with green dragon stripes on his head, just wants to study his little cute tanuki. A huge factor in the improvement of the ninja's strength in Hidden Sand Village in the future is because of the various research results of the 2nd generation of Sand Shadow. Puppet art, sand control ninjutsu. In terms of his research results, it can be said that he is a low-profile version of Qianshu Feijian. If ninja scientists want to make a leaderboard, this guy can at least rank in the top 5. The forest below passed quickly, and after a while, the fortress standing on a hill could be seen from a distance. Looking at the pitted outer wall of the fortress, some of the brown walls were stained black and red by dried blood. Knife marks, fire marks, etc. are densely arranged on it. As soon as he flew over the Konoha frontline headquarters, Danzo was the first to feel a sense of tension. Almost all ninjas were wearing bandages. The Konoha ninjas in charge of guarding did not recognize Danzo and Toothless when they saw Danzo and Toothless, but shot the kunai out of their hands. Then he became alert with a tense face, and shouted in his mouth, "Enemy attack! Enemy attack!" Judging by the jittery appearance, it is obvious that their spirits have been stretched to the extreme. What enemy attack? That's our commander-in-chief of the Hidden Sand defense line. The ninja who was in charge of the camp came out and recognized Danzo. The information sent from the village said that he had a black dragon psychic beast, so he quickly called the vigilant Zhongnan to stop. Hearing his words, both standing and lying ninjas looked at Shimura Danzo in the sky with bright eyes. They have been here for too long. Supporting until the arrival of reinforcements is their only idea. Other strongholds can be lost, but this is absolutely not possible. For this goal, they paid a lot. The colleagues who lived with them day and night were killed, and their bodies were covered with wounds, and they gritted their teeth to repel Sha Yin's attacks time and time again. The big trees on the border have always grown extremely lush, and it will be even more lush next year. He jumped off Toothless Boy and stepped on the ground compacted by the Earth-done ninjutsu, splashing a burst of dust. The Konoha ninjas who were still able to move around gathered around one after another, their eyes sparkling. After he came, it seemed that the whole camp was aroused with vitality. But when he saw Danzo's face, Konoha Zongren couldn't help worrying again. He was too young. Even though he had heard the name Shimura Danzo during the years he was stationed on the border, he was still a little worried. Young people are destined to not have the wily and calculating skills of adults. Danzo glanced around. As smart as he was, he could naturally see that their eyes were full of distrust of him. He smiled indifferently. The new official took office with 3 fires, and of course he also needed a battle to gain the trust of these veterans. Moreover, it has to be a big victory. After he eliminated the ninja team that the sand-hidden ninja invaded into the border, it was bound to weaken their intelligence ability on Konoha. And the following ninja troop should arrive here in a day. Besides, there are. Danzo walked to the command tent, constantly calculating in his heart, and his eyes flashed. Oh, it seems that some have played. Commander Sagakure Frontier, who was following him, looked at Danzo who was walking in front of him. His aura reminded him of the second generation of Hokage Senju Tobirama. It's all the same calm, the overall situation is in my feeling. Since Hokage-sama can trust this young man, why should he doubt Hokage's vision? Just do your best to help him. Konoha will win this battle. At the same time, the sand is hidden in the big camp. Ha ha ha, I didn't expect Konoha to be so easy to invade. Konoha ninjas are simply paper tigers. In the command tent, a sand ninja said with a smile while holding a wineglass. The hidden leaf village without Qianshu Zujian is nothing more than a fish for us to slaughter. What qualifications do they have to occupy such a good land? Look at this wine, it is better than the best wine in our Sha Yin. A sand ninja who was sitting second on the left picked up the wine glass and drank the wine looted from the border in one go and said angrily. Commander Sha Yin, who was sitting in the main seat, didn't disturb their interest, and he also felt that Konoha was too weak. The plan to attack Konoha this time was decided by the Sand Shadow Elders. Although Sha Ying was not very willing, he did not resist. He was just sent to be the commander-in-chief and gave him thousands of orders. When he first launched the attack, he didn't drink at all, and kept awake all the time, just to worry about the attack of the Konoha ninjas. The title of God of Ninja is still extremely oppressive, especially for someone like him who has experienced the Warring States period. After seeing that Konoha Ninja Village could not even organize an effective attack, he gradually relaxed his vigilance, especially after sending more than a dozen teams to infiltrate the border, and after success news came one after another, he no longer refused the invitations handed over by the elders. After all, it would offend people to refuse too many times, and he didn't want to be hated by them after the war. As for now, what battle report? What plan? Keep playing the music and dance for me. MD. They like to drink spicy food, but what about us? Just drink the cold wind outside. A ninja guarding the gate of Cheyenne camp smelled the scent coming from the command tent, his nose twitched, and he complained dissatisfiedly to the people around him. Who says no? I really envy those guys who go out to perform missions. I guess they have earned a lot of military exploits in the past few days. The sand ninja looked around and saw that the ninjas in charge of guarding were chatting like them, so he accepted the conversation with confidence. This is also the unanimous opinion of the entire sand-hidden camp. To perform the invasion mission is to follow a group of Junin to earn military exploits for nothing. As everyone knows, most of the teams sent by Sand Yin have been solved by the Jonin team led by Danzo. The complex dense forest terrain is not a problem for Danzo at all, and the domineering knowledge is equivalent to having a panoramic map anytime, anywhere, which is ridiculously accurate. Danzo's favorite thing to do these days is to be a fishing brother. Squat down where they must pass, and if they are confident, they will rush up like sharks smelling fishy smell, which is much better than the Air Force in the previous life. We must bring the information back. In the dark forest, A figure quickly shuttled on the branches of the big tree. Sweat dripped down his face, but he had no time to wipe it off. A few minutes ago, he was the captain of a sand-hidden invasion team, happily holding his spoils and preparing to return to the base camp. Suddenly, when the sensory ninjas in the team sensed that there was a Konoha ninja alone, they didn't think much, and just surrounded him as usual. Several companions with fairly good strength rushed up according to the perceived direction. The ghost knows how that Konoha ninja suddenly changed from a prey in his eyes to a fishing hunter, and he crippled himself and others with 2 times and 2 times. It is necessary to bring back the information that there is an extremely strong ninja in Konoha. On the battlefield, the role that a cage-level powerhouse can obtain is absolutely decisive. How could it be possible for you to run away? A pitch-black knife directly passed through his chest. He looked at the knife dripping blood on his chest in disbelief, and then he fell straight down. Judging from the soft-footed shrimp Shaoyin ninjas who were tortured, the Shaoyin team just now should be the last team. Next, is to prepare to implement the plan. The moon is gradually covered by dark clouds. The sand-hidden ninja in charge of security patrolled the outer wall with dim eyes, chatting with the people around him absent-mindedly. The peace of many days made them lose their due caution. The late information made them unaware that Konoha's backup troops had arrived at the front line. The current sand-hidden ninjas are still analyzing tactics based on outdated information. From their point of view, Konoha ninja would be lucky if they didn't take the initiative to attack. How could they come to sneak attack on the sand-hidden camp where the number of ninjas was several times that of theirs? In a dense forest not far from the sand-hidden camp, densely packed Konoha ninjas stood there, and they looked at the unaware sand-hidden ninjas in the distance with surprise. Could it be that the sand-hidden ninja who has fought with them for so long is so careless? Or is it because of the Black Shadow mercenary group standing by his side now? One by one, the Black Shadow ninjas squatted on the branches of the big trees. Roughly, there were more than 1,000 ninjas, and each of them had the strength of a ninja. Danzo clutched his heart and looked at the rushing points. The Black Shadow core is easy to use, but his meowing consumes too many points. A Black Shadow ninja who is ninja needs 10 points from my uncle. He looks at his few remaining points and wants to cry without tears. Now he is really poor. The original 6-digit points only had 4 digits left. Once back to before liberation, the points thrown in all these years are really a bottomless pit. But in order to maintain the status of the underground big brother who lives in the country of fire, he has to do it. Slowly exhaling a breath of gloom from his heart, Danzo raised his head and stared at the sand-hidden camp not far away with his sharp eyes. The culprits who wasted my uncle's points, wash your necks and wait for death. Looking at the group of ninjas behind him, I was extremely excited. In other words, it was the first time that he commanded so many subordinates. I'm sorry, but this time I'm really going to give you a punch. Danzo looked at the sky, counted the time, and slowly, it came to 4 o'clock in the middle of the night. This is also the most sleepy time of the day, and it is also the best time to attack. He raised his right hand and waved it lightly. One by one, ninjas in night clothes jumped over Danzo and ran towards the sleeping sand-hidden camp. The weapon in his hand shone with a terrifying light. So sleepy, do you feel a little cold? A sand ninja yawned, tightened his clothes, shook his body and said to his squinting companion. He shook his hands, leaned against the wall and closed his eyes. Don't disturb my sleep. If it's cold, it's cold. If you steal it, you'll be lazy. It's so late, no one will come. That's true. Sand Shinobi who just spoke out touched his head, leaned against the wall like him, and was about to squint his eyes when he felt a slight tremor on the wall. Such an unusual movement made him lose his drowsiness immediately and woke up his companions around him. Then he ran to the fence immediately, and found in despair that a dense army of ninjas rushed towards them. The mighty momentum made his hands and feet cold. Enemy attack. He uttered the last voice in his life, and then a kunai stuck in his throat, spitting blood from his mouth, and fell powerlessly to the ground. It can only be said that his death was worthwhile. Some ninjas who were slightly vigilant in the entire camp rubbed their eyes and came out to check, while others were still fast asleep. When all the ninjas reacted, the Konoha ninjas had already rushed through the defense facilities they had set up, and all kinds of ninjutsu were launched towards a group of unarmed sand-hidden ninjas. The Black Shadow ninja rushed to the forefront of the team, and took the lead in waving the katana in his hand. For a while, Sa Yin suffered heavy losses, and the smooth sailing made them lose the ability to withstand pressure. Thus, the most feared thing of all commanders happened. They bombed the camp. The two flustered Seigan ninjas had no time to distinguish whether the surrounding ninjas were friends or foes, so those who were still calm had to not only deal with the attack of Konoha ninjas in front, but also be distracted to be careful of the ninjutsu of their companions behind them. Commander Sha Yin, who was lying soundly asleep in the main tent, heard the sound from outside, got up dissatisfied, picked up the clothes hanging on the rack, and walked outside angrily. Which bastard interrupted my sleep? When he saw the sound of a massive fight coming from the front battalion, the remaining alcohol on his body immediately turned into a cold sweat, and he froze in place for a while. The first thought that came to mind was that it was over, that his military exploits were in vain. Then he shook his head. The most urgent task now is to repel Konoha's attack. Even if they have a lot more people, the Seigan ninja side still has the advantage in numbers. He who can be entrusted with important tasks by the second generation of Shaing still has several brushes when he is not messy. The ninjas of the elders also came out to check, reeking of alcohol, and they panicked when they saw the flames in the distance, and gathered around him one after another, discussing with one another. Commander Sha Yin waved his hand, and there was a hint of ruthlessness in his eyes, and he didn't care about being polite to those pig teammates. He turned around and scolded. Why panic? If you can successfully repel them, then it's still a great achievement. With a lot of thoughts in his heart, he dispatched the elite ninjas with him to gather all the ninjas in the concentration camp in the back camp, and hoped that the ninjas in the front camp could last a little longer. Commander Sha Yin showed a cruel smile as he thought about it. Compared with their lives, their own glory and wealth are more important. Anyway, no one knows, right? The black shadow ninja holding a shining katana turned into streaks of silver and white horses in the dim light of the morning, carrying countless bloody flowers. Huo Dun ignited the tent, causing a raging fire. Even if there were sporadic resistance, it was harmless. Slowly, the ninjas of the Shan front battalion gathered together under the guidance of their respective captains. After calming down, the sand-hidden ninja finally delayed the Konoha ninja's attack, mainly because the sand-hidden ninja who was not calm had already rushed to the street, and most of them were killed by their own people. Captain, there are too many Konoha bastards, we can't stand it anymore. A sand-hidden ninja dodged the katana of a black shadow ninja, and then used the few remaining chakras to throw out the wind to clear an area, and said to their captain panting heavily. The captain of the ninja team looked at the inexplicable enemy and could only grit his teeth. If you can't stand it, you have to fight it. The sand-hidden ninjas in the front battalion were all desperate, and there were fewer and fewer familiar figures on the battlefield. The ninjas with Konoha forehead guards had already rushed up, but the reinforcements behind them didn't know what they were doing. The commander in charge of the front battalion blocked Konoha ninjas' attacks time and time again. The enemy's eyes contained hatred for these intruders, which made him feel terrified. The ninja knife in his hand was getting blunter, and the chakra in his body was almost exhausted. Looking at the middle camp behind him, he remembered the character of the commander-in-chief, and he seemed to understand something. It turns out that we have become abandoned children. Then he murmured in disbelief. This is more than 1,000 lives. Looking at the blade in his hand that had been cut with countless gaps, the will in his heart collapsed instantly, and the whole person lost the will to fight. Out of the corner of his eye, he caught sight of Kurenai coming towards him. This time, he didn't block it with the ninja knife, and the sharp point of the knife pierced his body instantly. When he was dying, he seemed to have returned to his home in Cheyenne village, hugging his child and talking and laughing with his virtuous wife. A childlike smile appeared on his blood-stained face, and he closed his eyes in satisfaction. At this moment, the tragic battlefield has nothing to do with him. After seeing the commander of his front battalion who had been stubbornly resisting also fall, the fighting spirit of the remaining Sand Hermit ninjas also disappeared, and they all ran towards the middle battalion behind them, and the front battalion was completely lost. Stop. Those who retreat, cut. The elite ninja guards under the commander-in-chief Sand Yin looked at the hundreds of tattered sand ninjas who fled back and said coldly. The order they received was not to allow anyone to return from the front camp. Even if they died, they would die there. Although it was a bit unbearable, ninjas on the battlefield must obey orders. They must stay there, and they must stick to it. The sand-hidden ninja who finally came back looked in disbelief at the ninjas from the same village who were wary of them. You know, they have just returned from the battlefield ahead, and at this moment they feel extremely chilling. This is to make them all die there. All of a sudden, there was a commotion, and those personal guard ninjas slowly pulled out their ninja swords. The sharp blade made Sand Ninja, who had overdrawn his chakra due to excessive fighting just now, calm down aggrievedly. Report to the commander-in-chief. The front battalion is almost unable to hold on, and the commander in charge of the front battalion has already fallen. The Sha Yin personal guard ninja who came to report said with the slightest bit of reluctance, in their opinion, since their commander-in-chief could give up the lives of more than 1,000 brothers so easily. So one day, will they give up their lives like today? But he was busy deploying soldiers, he didn't notice the change in his subordinate's tone at all, and waved his hand to signal the ninja to go down and prepare. After his emergency deployment, he barely managed to mobilize the remaining sand-hidden ninjas, and set up a big net, and those ninjas who escaped back were his bait. If Konoha's commander is a short-sighted person, then. If not, then you can only face those Konoha ninjas who don't talk about martial arts and engage in sneak attacks. After killing the sand-hidden ninjas in the front battalion, Danzo ordered to stop those ninjas who wanted to continue chasing and killing red-eyed ninjas. You must know that the poor should not chase after them, and it seems that the commander-in-chief Sha Yin on the opposite side is a ruthless person. Abandoning the car to protect the commander is very good. After fighting for so long, there is no reinforcement from the middle battalion. If we wipe out our group of ninjas who came to surprise Cheyenne later, then this dangerous game will really be revived for him. Now it is estimated that a net has been laid out there, just waiting for these Konoha ninjas who are not in good condition to jump into it. Everyone, listen to my password, take Binglang pills, recover chakra, and return to your best state as soon as possible. After issuing such an order, Shimura Danzo handed over some of the detonating symbols hoarded over the years to the tireless Black Shadow ninjas, and they set up deadly traps one after another. The biggest loss in the battle just now was the Sombra Corps. Those who don't know ninjutsu will always rush to the front line, and at the same time block one powerful ninjutsu after another, so that the Konoha ninjas in the rear have time to cover firepower. There are less than 1,000 of the more than 1,000 Black Shadow ninjas left, and Konoha's ninjas have not lost much, which makes all the Konoha ninjas very surprised, why this group of Black Shadow mercenary guys rushed more fiercely than themselves. Regardless of whether there are traps or ninjutsu in front of them, they rushed up and slashed with knives without blinking their eyes, forcing the ninjutsu masters of Seigen Ninja to play taijutsu aggrievedly. This war was nothing short of a miracle. With the damage of hundreds of people, it successfully swallowed up more than 1,000 people from Sha Yin's battalion. The ratio of enemy casualties to 3 is simply a miracle on a large-scale battlefield. Such a record made the veteran ninja of Shimura Danzo lower his proud head no matter how unconvinced he was. If there are still sour people who say bad things about Danzo, not only will they not agree with him now, but they will spray him to death with saliva. This achievement is enough to make everyone shut up. Commander Sha Yin saw that there was no movement from the front battalion at this time, so he couldn't help but sighed. Hey, it's a pity, it seems that Konoha's commander-in-chief is a capable person. Looking through the battle report materials sent a few days ago, when I saw Danzo's side, he was so good that even the commander-in-chief Sha Yin was very jealous. Young, powerful, trusted by Hokage, and convinced by his subordinates, it is really not easy, and he is very likely to be a candidate for Konoha's high-level management, if he is kept. Feeling the thousands of sand ninjas that have been rectified behind him, he turned his head and looked at the front battalion greedily. As long as they were wiped out, not only would there be no punishment after returning, but it could also be said to be his own plan. Wrong. This was originally his own plan, and this is the credit. Everyone, listen to the order. He stood on the temporary high platform, and his voice could be heard by everyone in the audience under the blessing of chakra. Let them raise their heads one by one. Let's go, avenge our dead brothers. This sentence was full of anger, as if he really had this idea. The sand-hidden ninjas who didn't know the truth below raised their weapons and shouted, yes. Many of the ninjas in the front battalion were acquainted with them, and some of them were even related by blood. All of a sudden, their morale was raised to the extreme by Commander Sha Yin. The high-pitched voice resounded through the sky, and even the dark clouds in the sky seemed to be shaken away. This kind of voice naturally made Konoha Zongren also hear it, and it was really hard versus hard all of a sudden. Everyone, be alert. Danzo gave the order calmly, and looked coldly at the Cheyenne Zhongying, which was starting to leave in the distance. The densely packed figures were no less than their own. A bloody battle is about to be triggered. The sand ninjas who had just returned from the front camp looked coldly at the ninja who was about to go to the front camp. They knew that no matter what they said now, they would not believe it. Of course, the look in their eyes that looked down on them, the defeated ninjas of the former battalion, was also an important reason. It would be too embarrassing for the Konoha ninjas who were hanged and beaten by their sand ninjas a few days ago to be beaten in turn. When they come back victorious, they must laugh at these defeated ones. Sand hermit ninjas rushed up like gray locusts, with a bloodthirsty gleam in their eyes, and recklessly rushed past the trap area set by Danzo just now. The explosions that happened from time to time made their faces change drastically. It's too dark. The frenzied attack rhythm suddenly stagnated, and the commander-in-chief Sha Yin had to sullenly ask his ninjas to slow down the attack rhythm to clear away the troublesome trap. Danzo saw that their attacking rhythm was disrupted by himself. A smile appeared on the corner of his mouth, and he shook a feather fan that came out of nowhere in his hand. Go all out, then decline. 3 times exhausted, this step, he has already missed the initiative. Commander Sha Yin looked at the detonating talismans densely scattered all over the place with an ugly expression. After it was completely cleaned up, the morale of his side that had just been mobilized by him was probably almost consumed. I have to say, you are a very good young man. Commander Sha Yin looked at Danzo in the distance, and praised in a cold tone. He didn't expect to be able to make himself a nail just at the beginning, which made his heart unavoidably covered with a layer of haze. Danzo Shimura shook his feather fan lightly, like a gentleman, and said with a gentle smile, "Where, nowhere, I didn't hammer you to death in one fell swoop, you still need to learn more." Oh, arrogant boy. After hearing what Danzing said, he blew his beard and stared angrily. Since his status has risen, no one has dared to talk to him like this for many years. Are you still young if you are not crazy? Judging by your face, I am afraid that you will not live long. According to the calculation of my young man, it should be today, so pay attention to your body. Danzo pinched his fingers decently, and said to him with a concerned face. Commander Sha Yin laughed back angrily. Seeing that the detonating talisman had been almost cleaned up by ninjutsu, he raised his right hand and swung it down vigorously. All the Sha Yin ninjas roared and rushed to the battlefield. The Konoha ninja on the other side also rushed up with red eyes after receiving Danzo's order. After being passively beaten for so many days, how can one front battalion be enough? At least his entire battalion must come to make an apology. The morning sun in the sky broke through the darkness, and the warm sunshine shone on everyone's faces. The original peaceful atmosphere was broken by shouts of killing. The blazing fire devours people, the sharp wind blade cuts through the air and screams, and the thick earth wall becomes the mausoleum of ninjas who died in battle. God has no shadow. Danzo flicked the feather fan in his hand, and dozens of feathers turned into invisible arrows and shot at the sand-hidden ninjas who wanted to rush in front of him, nailing them to the ground directly. Put the lupine in your hand back into the system space. This must not be lost. It is a sharp weapon to show the holiness in front of people. Without it, I always feel that something is missing. A pair of sharp eyes looked at Commander Sand Yin not far away and the many elite ninjas around him. Catch the thief first, catch the king. Outnumbered, the advantage lies with me. Combining the body-bending technique and shaving on the feet, the toothless boy in the air cuts through the sky. With its hard dragon scales and excellent flying ability, not many people can do anything to get it on the battlefield. In this way, one person and one dragon rushed directly into the sand-hidden ninjas, obviously wanting to abolish their brains. What an arrogant boy. I've never seen you so brave in most of my life. Commander Sha Yin was not surprised but pleased when he saw Danzo coming towards him. After all, in his opinion, he is just a brat. No matter how powerful he is, how powerful can he be? It can't be the same as Senju Juma and Uchiha Madara when they were young, right? Just go straight to the Buddha and put on Susan, invincible in the ninja world, right? 2 lifeless sand ninja formed seals in their hands, trying to intercept him in midair. Wind escape, breakthrough, fire escape, flame bullet. 2 ninjutsu roared and attacked Danzo. Playing this in front of me and Toothless. Who do you look down on? One person and one dragon showed disdain in their eyes at the same time, turned their heads to look at each other, and grinned. Let them be the first to try to develop this new ninjutsu. Wind escape vacuum wave long yan combination ninjutsu, flame dragon's roar. The flame and air blade mixed together directly cut through the ninjutsu attacking from below, cutting off the two people directly at the waist, and the high temperature of the flame temporarily stopped the bleeding, making the two people struggle in pain for a long time before they died. This kind of ninjutsu stopped the sand ninja who was about to step forward to stop Danzo, pretending to be invisible and rushing towards the crowd of Konoha ninjas in the distance. A bunch of bastards. The commander-in-chief Seigan looked at the death of the two, slightly hairy, and yelled at the Seigan ninja who was afraid of Danzo, and signaled the guard ninja around him to get ready. The obscure chakra thread in his hand was jumping at his fingertips, and there was a trace of fear in his eyes. He originally thought that the puppet secret technique passed down by Mr. Sandshadow could suppress him. Now seeing the power of Danzo's ninjutsu, I can't help beating my heart. Maybe, probably, it seems to be a trick. Wei Wei took half a step back, letting his ninja stand in front of him. As for fighting Danzing, just kidding, he hasn't lived yet. He has spent most of his life on the battlefield, so he just wants to enjoy it now. Seeing Danzo and Toothless getting closer, those sand ninjas responsible for protecting the commander stepped forward one after another, using various ninjutsu. But they were all dodged by the exquisite cooperation of Danzo and Toothless Boy. It seems that these troublesome guys must be dealt with. Wind escape vacuum jade. The chakra accumulated in the mouth was launched like a cannonball, and the condensed wind escape chakra slammed hard on the sand shinobi who stepped forward to block them, sending them flying one by one, and they collapsed on the ground clutching their chests, with blood dripping from the corners of their mouths. After clearing an area, Danzo jumped off Toothless with a somersault, drew his knife, and gave him a big smile. Hello. Danzing Express, the mission must be fulfilled. My uncle is here to kill you. Commander Sakage saw that his own guards could not do any effective damage to Shimura Danzo, and his face was ugly. He thought of the puppet secret technique and the mysterious person sent by Sakage, and he felt a little settled. Although what I have learned is still a half-finished product, it must be enough to deal with you. The chakra thread dancing in his hand flew towards the body that was chopped down by Danzo. The ninjas who had died stood up strangely, picked up the weapons in life and rushed towards Danzo. With his current attainments in puppetry, he is far from being able to control puppets that can continue to fight, and manipulating those corpses is already his limit. It's too fancy, you can't beat me in life, let alone after death. One shot flow swallow return. A brilliant knife light cut the rushing corpses in half, and the chakra threads attached to them were taken back after they were useless. Cut it in half. Let's see how you can control them. Go on, old guy. Danzo stroked the knife with one hand, and the chakra, who was saving the blade, looked at him playfully. HMPH, damn kid. This old man also broke through on the battlefield. Commander Sagakushi flipped his fingers and stared at Shimura Danzo coldly. Out of the corner of his eye, he signaled the mysterious man sent by Sha Ying to move. At this time, the mysterious white-robed man who had been following him finally started to move. He took out a scroll, and as the white smoke dispersed, 10 white robes of various styles appeared in front of him, and he also slowly took off his hat, revealing a young face. It is the first Sand Shadow elite ninja who learned and improved the second generation of Sand Shadow puppet art, Monzaemon. And those puppets shook off their white robes, looking at the exposed mechanical figures. It was the 10 people from Jinsong. Finally, someone who can fight has come. Danzing looked at those sophisticated mechanical puppets, raised his brows, and said with interest. It's now. Give it to the old man. At this time, the high-level ninjutsu prepared by Commander Sand Yin happened to be completed. A wind blade slashed towards Danzo at an extremely fast speed, and Monzaemon turned his palm over, and except for the No, and No puppets who were guarding by his side, all the other puppets rushed over. Wind escape vacuum sword. Several chi blades slashed at ninjutsu's body, forcibly offsetting it until it disappeared. But Danzo didn't feel relaxed at all. What really made him feel tricky was the 10 people in Shimatsu behind him. As a master of mechanical puppets, he didn't dare to be careless at all. Puppet art binding puppet art attack as the chakra thread in Monzaemon's hand beat at a certain frequency. Several of the puppets used their own means. Several fine steel chains emerged from one of the puppets' heads, trying to entangle Danzo with the sound of breaking through the air. At the same time, a female puppet holding 2 knives also rushed towards him. If you get entangled, it will be troublesome. Danzo looked at the chains with a solemn expression, tapped his toes, and jumped away at an extremely fast speed. The chains were firmly stuck on the ground, splashing countless gravel, and the 2-knife puppet jumped vertically. But, playing with a knife in front of him, who do you look down on? One sword-style tiger hunting. The blade of the blade quickly transformed into a black sword, using Tsukibu's skills to borrow strength in midair and slashed down from top to bottom. With a loud roar, Monzaemon's expression changed, and he wanted to move the puppet away, but it was too late, and the two collided directly. The double knife puppet was obviously not as powerful as Danzo's move, so it was blown away and fell heavily to the ground. His whole body was covered with cracks, and he tried to stand up, but black smoke came out of his body, obviously losing his ability to fight. Puppet art side the two puppets were combined, and the sharp chakra knife was spinning, cutting through the air and flying towards Danzo. He wanted to go forward to make up the knife and completely destroy the puppet that fell on the ground, but seeing a new round of attacks, he had no choice but to give up. He concentrated on dealing with this even more strange combination of puppets, but he didn't see that the other 3 puppets around Danzo had been quietly distributed around Danzo, arranged in the form of a 3-talent formation. A smile appeared on the corner of Monzaemon's mouth, and he was overjoyed that he finally took the bait. Puppet Art 3 Treasures Suction. A strong sealing force came from the 3 monk puppets, tightly suppressing Danzo, and the violent sound of the attacking combination puppets seemed to be blowing the horn of death. For a while, Danzo was in danger. The sealing power of the 3 puppets of Buddha, Dharma, and Monk is extremely good, and they continuously put pressure on Danzo in the center of the formation. Such pressure made Danzo seem to be in a quagmire, so that he could only take the attack of the combined puppet scythe. Toothless, who was flying in midair, saw his master's plight with his eyes wide open, and rushed down anxiously, fighting with the combined puppets who wanted to attack Danzo. He was covered in dragon scales but couldn't stop the sharp chakra knife. Not long after, he was scratched many times on his body. His eyes were very firm, and he held back the pain and continued to charge forward. Because it knows that if it shrinks back for fear of being injured, then Danzo below will be in danger of life. So, this time, even if it dies, will not take a step back either. Danzing looked at the cut wounds on Toothless Boy's body, and looked at the puppets with tears in his eyes. A few drops of blood dripped on his face, and dragon blood mixed with tears flowed down his cheeks. Drop by drop fell on the ground. You must know that this little idiot is the most afraid of pain. The wooden knife in his hand seemed to feel the master's mood, trembling violently, making bursts of knife noise. The evil ghost tattoo was slightly glowing at this time. Danzo raised his head, his whole body exuded black air, his eyes were blood red, as if he wanted to choose someone to devour. He slowly raised his foot, and stepped down heavily. At this moment, Overlord Color has successfully advanced, and the invisible force raged wildly, unexpectedly breaking through the restriction of their sealing technique, and shaking the 3 puppets up. In Shimura Danzo's state, the Overlord domineering chi was wrapped around the black knife, releasing a terrifying aura. Blast of the wind. A storm was brewing in the field, and a phantom appeared and disappeared in the wind, cutting and scrapping the 3 puppets in an instant, and the precise puppets fell to the ground in an instant. No matter how much the chakra line was manipulated, they did not respond. When the 3 puppets were lost, the calm expression on Monzaemon's face disappeared immediately. Although the 3 puppets were not focused on defense, their materials were also extraordinary, and none of them could stop his sword skills. The host is in an unstable situation at this time. Please be careful. Please be careful with it. Close black lens bracket. Looking at Danzo's state at this time, the system is also worried. Although under his restriction, the side effects of the black shadow mask are limited a lot, but now it has obviously broken through the restriction left by him. If I knew it earlier, I wouldn't ask for leave and go back to soak in other systems. Beauty fooled me. Commander Sha Yin looked at Danzo in front of him like a ghost, and was horrified. If even such a strong puppet couldn't stop him, then he might be. Danzo jumped into the sky, caressing Toothless Boy's deep wound pitifully. His heart twitched. It looked at Danzo with tired eyes, and when it saw that its master was fine, it grinned happily and went back to the psychic land to recuperate. After seeing Toothless Boy go back, Danzo looked at the 2 people in front of him coldly, and said slowly, "You really deserve to die." The two people on the opposite side looked at each other and used their strongest means one after another. The remaining 6 puppets also stepped forward together, one move after another, constantly bombing the area where Danzo was located. Until there was not much chakra left on their bodies, panting heavily, looking at the field where thick smoke rose, they laughed out of luck. I don't know why. Danzo's eyes just now made even the elite of them, the elite ninjas, feel a little hairy. After the smoke dissipated, there was only a deep hole left by the bombing, and a thin wind wall stood there, which did not hurt Tuanzang behind him at all. The two laughed halfway, and suddenly widened their eyes and looked at Danzo, seeing them froze. The person in front of him grinned, but this smile was very cold, very cold. Laugh. Why don't you keep laughing? His voice seemed to be a messenger from purgatory, singing a lullaby from hell. Is it my turn now? Scumbags. When the black knife was turned, the original blood on the blade became more vivid, as if it was flowing. There was a sound of saber groaning continuously, as if urging its master, as if saying that it couldn't help but want to taste the blood from the enemy. Don't worry, I'll let you drink to your full later. Danzo gently stroked the trembling blade, and said softly. The two people not far away felt that their scalps were numb after hearing these words, and their nerves were tense from the battle that had been tempered, and they kept sending dangerous signals. After raising his head, Danzo looked at the puppets rushing towards him with slightly red eyes. The blue-faced puppets wanted to repeat the old plan. Several fine steel chains came with the sound of breaking through the air, and the puppets following behind stretched out a hand with a strong seal force. Danzo looked at the chains with disdainful eyes, and thrust the knife into the ground, and the chains were smashed away by the overwhelming coercion. After a moment of footsteps, the figure in place slowly dissipated, causing the pupils of the two to shrink. Danzo's speed at this time has made their eyes unable to keep up. Immediately afterwards, the puppet, which was trying to use the sealing technique, was blasted out, and dust rose from the ground. It looked like a deep crack had been cut on its body. Obviously, it had followed in the footsteps of its predecessors. Good opportunity. Monzaemon looked at the puppet being destroyed. Instead of being angry, he was happy, and his fingers moved as if they were playing music. And his two strongest melee puppets have already run near Danzo. The remaining 4 puppets took advantage of the opportunity of its sacrifice, and rushed forward one after another. The 2 melee puppets waved their fists and slammed Danzo hard. Wherever the fist passed, even the air exploded. Shimura Danzo looked at the obviously good attack, and unhurriedly blocked it horizontally. The moment the blade touched the fist, there was a gust of wind, which made his clothes tremble constantly, making a hunting sound. It is indeed the pinnacle of the mechanical puppet. Feeling the pressure from the black knife, even if it is an enemy, Danzing secretly praises it in his heart. However, just relying on such power is still far from enough. With a force on the wrist, the blade vibrated lightly, and the 2 puppets retreated at once. Pole 1 sword flow swallow back. The knife light, which was even brighter than before, slashed across the puppet's body. The knife marks were so deep that the gears turning inside could already be seen. As the 2 puppets fell down again, Monzaemon's expression couldn't hold back any longer, and a look of panic floated on his surface. Those 2 puppets were already the 2 strongest puppets in his hands. They all fell down, so he no longer had the confidence to rely on the few crooked melons and dates left to block Danzo's amazing knife light. Then such words. Monzaemon looked at Commander Sagakushi, who had been terrified by Danzo beside him, looked at the remaining puppets with distress, gritted his teeth and waved his hands, and the remaining puppets stopped in front of Danzo with red eyes. The task that Sha Ying gave him was to protect this trash around him, to be entrusted by the king, and to be loyal to the king. Since he agreed to his teacher's request, he would definitely complete it, even if he lost his most proud work in his life. He picked up Commander Sand Yin, who had fallen on the ground, and ran towards the place where there were most ninjas in Sand Yin at the fastest speed. He couldn't believe it. With so many people on his side, would he be afraid of him alone? Halfway through the run, by accident, he turned his head and saw that the 10 people from Jinsong had all fallen to the ground. Although they had made preparations, they still felt a pain in their hearts. It might be that he would never be able to make such puppets again for the rest of his life. Danzo withdrew the black knife from the body of the last puppet, raised his head and looked at the 2 people who were running away. After the battle, the black energy on his body had dissipated a lot, and his eyes regained some clarity. Walking up to a huge flag, He waved his knife with a cold face, and the big flag, which symbolized the Sand Hermit Ninja, fell slowly. As the flag fell, the Konoha ninjas who were fighting in the distance cheered. Their high morale boosted their combat power a bit. On the other hand, even the ninjas at the squad leader level couldn't help panicking on the side of the sand-hidden ninjas. What's more, those ordinary ninjas make frequent mistakes for a while, and on the battlefield, even a little mistake will become the cause of death. Countless sand ninjas died at that moment, and blood was sprinkled on the excited Konoha ninjas. Slowly, the two sides that were originally evenly matched have begun to have a gap, which means that the balance of victory has tilted towards Konoha. Commander Xiaoli looked at the felled Shuaiki and roared weakly, because he knew that he had already lost this war so far, and the defeat was complete. Raising his spirits, he who had calmed down ordered the living personal guard ninjas to summon the fighting sand ninjas as quickly as possible to fight and retreat. Now that things have happened, he can only try to preserve the vitality of Cheyenne village, and he dare not think about anything else. Because whether it is strategy or personal strength, this veteran ninja found to his dismay that he is not as good as this young man who has entered the battlefield like no one in front of him. The next era may be his era. Looking at the most outstanding genius of Sand-Hidden Village beside him, he shook his head helplessly. After all, Konoha is still the No Ninja Village. Sand Hermits could naturally recognize the guards who were with their commander-in-chief, and they were overjoyed when they heard the news of their retreat. I don't know why. The Konoha ninjas they are fighting now are different from the ones they fought a few times before. The current Konoha ninjas are like bad wolves, fighting constantly under the leadership of the Wolf King. Obviously the person is still the same person, but the combat power has doubled several times, making the Sand Hermit ninja extremely aggrieved. As time passed, the Sand-Hidden ninjas fought and retreated. I don't know how long it took, but the only ninjas who were standing at the Sand-Hidden camp were the ninjas wearing Konoha forehead guards. Sand Shinobi only left a place of corpses. We won. Ha ha ha. Everyone was panting heavily, but their faces were filled with extremely excited smiles. This battle washed away their shame for many days. One by one looked wildly at Shimura Danzo who was sitting on the high platform wiping the wooden knife. This is their commander-in-chief, a man who can lead them to win the battle. At this time, Danzo looked at the forest in the distance. He had already won this time, but it was not guaranteed that when they and the Konoha ninjas went to guard the eastern front, they would come back and fight back. Besides, his state just now. This state of being out of his control made Danzo's heart tighten. Although his strength was indeed much stronger, his heart was now very impetuous, which was completely different from his usual calm heart. He looked at Konoha ninja's eyes looking at him, and he calmed down a lot, his eyes became firm again, and he cleared his messy thoughts. No matter, let's get through this difficulty first. Sand-Hidden Ninja Temporary Camp. There were screams from everywhere in the crude camp, and the wounded ninjas held their wounds and let out low growls. It was obvious that their retreat was not smooth. Since they were beaten away this time, they didn't even carry much food on them, not to mention the medicines that were not easy to carry. These injured sand ninjas could only rely on their own physical fitness to carry them. If you can't handle it, these ninjas who have been on the battlefield for a long time naturally know what it means to be injured without medicine, and the low air pressure lingers in the entire camp. Report to the commander-in-chief, after this battle, the number of our ninjas. The ninja who opened the temporary tent and came in held the data to the commander-in-chief Xiaoli, but looked at the paper in his hand, but was speechless. Commander Xiaoli's heart sank at his reaction, and he snatched the thin paper from his hand. The statistics on it made his vision go dark, and he couldn't accept it for a while, so he fell down on the table. The ninja who accompanied him rushed forward to help him, but he waved his hand and refused. Looking at the data in his hands, he said in a trembling voice with deep sadness, "The number of ninjas has decreased by 1/3. I am a sinner in Yinsha village." Hearing the screams coming from outside the tent from time to time, his heart was even more uncomfortable. He thought that this time he came here just to gain some military exploits. This time, not to mention being promoted to a noble, it would be the best not to be imprisoned. Fight with Konoha again. As soon as this idea came to my mind, I remembered Danzo Shimura who had killed me like a demon before, and shook my head quickly, throwing away this obviously irrational idea. Besides, the number of soldiers available for battle now is less than half of the original number, and I have to be responsible for them. It must not be because I was afraid of that Shimura Danzo. But if he doesn't continue to fight, what should he do next? There is not much food in the camp, and once they go back, they will inevitably be punished. For a while, he was in a dilemma. What do you say should be done next? I don't know, I'm so homesick right now. A sand-hidden ninja with a bandage on his head looked at the sky in confusion, and said to his companion who was also injured beside him. This time, he really missed the god of death. At this moment, this man no longer had the ambition he had just set out for the war. Now he misses the unpalatable brown rice at home very much. And this sand-hidden ninja is just a microcosm of the entire sand-hidden camp. This kind of sentiment spread throughout the entire camp. They no longer want to fight this war that has no chance of winning. Danzo-sama, our scout team has discovered the camp of the sand-hidden ninjas. Konoha Ninja Scout Captain lowered his head and reported to the young man in front of him. According to the information they brought back, Danzo looked at the sand table reproduced according to the real terrain, and thought carefully. It is not difficult to find the traces of the retreat of so many sand-hidden ninjas, but the location of their camp is too good. Although they are sure to attack them by force, the casualties are unacceptable for Danzo. After all, we will have to fight against Mist Ninja next time, so if there are too many casualties, it will be too late. He wandered around the camp with his thoughts on his mind, and almost all Konoha ninjas looked at him in conviction wherever he went. Danzo pressed his hand and signaled not to salute. Suddenly, I saw a group of Konoha ninjas in front of me, bustling with people, so I moved forward curiously. It turned out to be a young Konoha ninja holding a leaf and blowing a song belonging to Konoha. The melodious song makes people intoxicated. The power from the song made the hostility in Danzo's heart dissipate a little. At the end of the song, the ninjas who had their eyes closed opened their eyes only to find Danzo approaching them, and hurriedly saluted him. Shimura Danzo waved his hand, looked at Konoha Ninja who was playing the song just now, and had a flash of inspiration, waved his hand to call him to his side. The song you play is very nice, what's its name? He seemed at a loss when he saw Danzo, and it took Danzo to ask patiently for a second time before he recovered, and quickly said, Master Danzo, my name is Uchiha Keikaze. Uchiha. At this time, Danzo saw the Uchiha clan emblem embroidered on the back of his clothes, and was a little surprised, because this little ninja was obviously different from other proud Uchihas. Do you know any other songs? For example, the songs of Hidden Sand Village, the kind of longing to return to your hometown? Uchiha Keikaze lowered his head and thought about it carefully. After a while, his eyes lit up and said, such a song, I will. Ha 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 ha, I have a solution. Hearing his answer, he immediately pulled Uchiha Keikaze's hand excitedly and walked back to the tent used for the meeting, summoned all the ninja captains in Konoha, and carried out a new round of planning. The sun gradually came to midair and then slowly set. Guys, that's my plan. Do you have any opinions? Danzo stood up with his hands propped up, and looked at the captains in front of him with a pair of sharp eyes. They stared at the young man in front of them dumbfounded. They never thought that the war could be fought like this. Although a bit unexpected, if it succeeds, it will definitely be a great thing for Konoha. They looked at each other and said in unison, Master Danzo, we have no objection. Nodding in satisfaction, he waved his hand and let them go down to start preparations for their respective teams. After everyone left, Danzo shook his feather fan gently, smiling confidently. As the night came quietly, some Konoha ninjas who should have fallen asleep moved again. Teams ran towards the outer edge of Shain's temporary camp, but they didn't intend to break in. They stood in rows, as if they were waiting for something. Enemy attack. The sand ninja who was in charge of guarding was the first to discover the Konoha ninjas this time, and the whole camp suddenly became agitated, and all the sand ninjas woke up, looking nervously at the few enemies in the distance. Is everything ready? Danzo asked while holding a lupine and shaking it. Ready. All the ninjas responded in unison. Commander Sha Yin led a group of high-level officials to look at Konoha ninja, feeling very strange. What are they going to do? With this amount of ninjas, they can't get in. The melodious singing voice sang from their mouths, wafting over the entire sand-hidden camp, and all the sand ninjas were stunned. This is exactly the song of their hometown. Bang. A sand ninja dropped the weapon in his hand on the ground, squatted down, and burst into tears. He was so homesick. Slowly, more and more weapons fell to the ground, and every tough man in normal life was crying like a child. Their respective squad leaders wanted to yell at them, but there were too many people to stop them at all. Suddenly, they tasted a salty taste at the corner of their mouths, and it turned out that their eye circles were also red. It's over. The general situation is over. Listening to the singing, Commander Sha Yin slumped on the ground as if he had aged 10 years, and murmured with a wry smile. Danzo listened to the cries from the Cheyenne camp in the distance. A smile appeared on the corner of his mouth, and the stone in his heart fell down. This time it was stable. The way to use soldiers is to attack the mind as the top, and attack the city as the bottom. Heart battle is the top, military battle is the bottom. After one day, the border of the land country. Thousands of hands, who was in the meeting, indirectly passed the battle report scroll sent by the carrier pigeon. After taking it apart, his eyes became brighter and brighter, his tired face was swept away, his excitement was beyond words, and he couldn't help laughing in the handsome tent. Ha 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 ha. At this time, Konoha's high-level ninja who was having a meeting together looked at Hokage smiling so happily, and was puzzled in his heart. He was recovering from his joy, and he smiled and said to the curious Konoha executives. Everyone. I declare. The sand-hidden defense line led by Shimura Danzo has achieved a major victory. Everyone present couldn't believe it. In their view, the strengths of the two sides were not equal at all, and the number of sand-hidden ninjas was obviously more than that of Konoha. What's more, it was the veteran who led the army. Before Konoha built the village, many ninjas were plotted against by this old guy, and Danzo was so young, they were lucky to be able to persist undefeated. They even managed to win the war under such conditions. This can no longer be described as luck. Sitting in the chair of the 1,000 hands, watching the reaction of the crowd, the smile on the corner of his mouth never stopped. He originally thought to beat Iwagakure to the ground as soon as possible, and then return to defend the Eastern Front, but the willpower of the Iwagakure ninja far exceeded his imagination. After fighting with them for nearly a month, under the continuous planning of Tobirama, Yanyan village injured countless ninjas, and they were still able to grit their teeth and hold on. This undoubtedly made him very anxious. If the time is delayed by one day, the Eastern Front will be in danger of collapsing. Vortex village has already been pushed up, but it probably won't last long. Unexpectedly, my disciple gave him such a big surprise, and next, Konoha finally had the energy to defend the Eastern Front. Looking at the detailed process of defeating the sand ninja recorded in the battle report, even if he was as resourceful as he was, he felt frightened. He put himself in the sand ninja's commander-in-chief, and couldn't think of a solution for a while. Fortunately, Shimura Danzo comes from Konoha. Read the battle report carefully again, can't help nodding. The method is sinister enough, dark enough. He is worthy of being my disciple of Qianshubajian. Pick up the pen next to it, and write it on Danzo's request for instructions on how to deal with the issue of the sand-hidden village seeking peace. Do it cheaply. Stuff the scroll into another new carrier pigeon. As a specially trained pigeon, it can arrive at Danzo in half a day. While the white wings were flying, the letter had already arrived at the camp of the hidden sand defense line. Danzo quickly scanned the content recorded in the letter, looked at the thousands of sand ninjas who were placed in the prisoner camp, and smiled slightly. This time, I must show the demeanor of my country of fire. He took out his pen, bent down under the oil lamp, and wrote out items that Cheyenne needed to pay for. After a while, the white paper had been densely written. The next day, the envoys from Hidden Sand Village have already walked into the temporary conference hall. Every face tried to show a calm look. The purpose of their coming this time is to redeem the ninjas who were captured by Konoha. These are the vital forces of Hidden Sand Village, accounting for 2/3 of the ninjas in Hidden Sand. If they lose them, the status of the 5 hidden villages will definitely not be maintained. Among other things, the nearby Yanyan village is not necessarily the case. They have been peeping at it all the time. No matter how barren the land of the Wind Country is, it is still land. After conquering this piece of land, they can at least train thousands more ninjas. Why worry about the failure of the great cause? The sun gradually climbed to the highest position of the day, as time passed. The messenger of Sand Yin had already started to look anxious, and couldn't sit still at all. He stood up and walked around from time to time, but he couldn't get out of this conference hall, so he could only continue to wait. After an unknown amount of time, footsteps finally came from outside the conference hall. Ha 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 ha, I'm sorry, I'm too busy, I hope you can forgive me. Danzo pushed open the door of the conference hall, and said to them with a smile, as if he didn't see the sullen expression on the face of the Xiaolian messenger. A slightly younger female Xiaolian envoy looked at Danzo with a face full of indifference. She hadn't seen anyone for a long time and was holding her breath. She took a deep breath and was about to shout angrily when she was scolded by the envoy leader beside her. "You this, Chio." Then he turned his head to look at Danzo and the others, with a forced smile on his face and said, It's okay. Danzo-sama is so young and promising, he must have a lot of opportunities every day, it's understandable." Danzo frowned, but he didn't expect to endure it, but don't worry, this is just an appetizer. Both sat on either side of the table with false smiles. The atmosphere suddenly fell into a strange silence. Now the comparison is who can hold their breath. In the negotiation, the party who speaks first will naturally fall into a disadvantage. The sunlight outside the window gradually dimmed, and the stomach of the person on the side of the Cheyenne messenger could be heard from time to time. Finally, the leader of the Cheyenne emissary couldn't bear the hunger coming from his stomach, gritted his teeth and said, "Dear Konoha ninja, we request the redemption of all our ninjas." After finishing speaking, he paused, took out the scroll that was kept close to him and handed it to Danzo, who was sitting opposite. He stretched out a hand to take it, unfolded it to look, and was a little surprised in his heart. There are quite a lot of supplies written on it, enough to make up for Konoha's losses in this war, but we can consider your request, but these alone are not enough. After saying this sentence, he ignored the leader of the sand-hidden messenger, who showed a shocked expression, and motioned to a Konoha ninja beside him with his eyes to ask him to take out the list he wrote last night. After Sha Yin's party saw the various materials written on the list, they almost recited them in one breath. The amount recorded on it was not a small amount, at least it was 3 times the supplies written on the scroll handed out, and it just happened to be stuck on the maximum compensation that the leader of the emissary could decide. This made him feel very aggrieved, but when he saw the dough hiding in front of him, he felt a chill in his heart. It was obvious that this man had firmly grasped the lifeline of their sand ninja. Danzo saw the moody face of the leader of the messenger, stretched boredly, stood up, leaned down with his hands on the table and said to them, "This sand hermit messenger, please don't show such an expression. This is not to discuss with you, but to inform you." Then he raised his foot towards the door, paused the moment he walked out of the door, and said lightly, "If you don't give it, then we Konoha will get it in our own way." The wooden door was closed again and again, and all Danzo in the room were ignored. "Master Danzo," they agreed. After a Konoha ninja walked into the commander's tent, his face was full of excitement. The Konoha ninjas in the whole camp could not imagine that they could agree to such an exaggerated redemption condition. This is simply a miracle. Danzing sat at the table and wrote vigorously. Without raising his head, he replied, "Okay, got it. Wait here." After a while, I picked up the scroll, and the light from the oil lamp could clearly see the various uses of Cheyenne compensation materials written on it through the paper. The ninja who came to report glanced slightly, and after seeing the above content clearly, he was shocked. It turned out that Danzo-sama had already made up his mind, and played with the messengers of Cheyenne in his hands. "Thanks to myself. I was so happy before, I really shouldn't, it's embarrassing," to Danzo-sama. The fanaticism in their eyes is even worse. The man in front of them will definitely lead them to win one victory after another. Because he himself is a miracle. Take it to the logistics department, and after they deliver the materials from Sha Yin, they will be deployed according to the use above. After the ninja bowed his head and exited, Danzo got up and looked at the map of the ninja world hanging in the tent. The 4 surrounding countries salivate at the land of fire, which is tightly surrounded by them. There is the most fertile land there. As long as they occupy it, their own country will have a chance to dominate the ninja world. With their wolfish ambitions, they will not give up easily. Only when they are hurt and scared, will they retreat obediently. This war is far from over, and the next battle with Mist Ninja Village is even more dangerous. In this war, Kazekage of Hidden Sand Village did not show up, but if the defense line is to the east, Mizukage will definitely appear on the battlefield, and he needs to be more careful. Soldiers, the country's major events, the place of death and life, the way of survival, must be observed. Every move of the coach on the battlefield must be very cautious. If one step is wrong, another step will be wrong. Heavens and Worlds Mission System Host, Danzo Shimura. Chakra. Wind, 10.1 calories. Strength, Elite Jonin, Shadow Class. Points. 105,000 Bloodline. One Piece World Family D. Inheritance. Wind Swordsman Yasuo, Elite, Skills. 1 Sword Style Tiger Hunting, Expert. 1 Sword Style Swallow Return, Elite. 3 Body Technique, Expert. Wind Escape Great Breakthrough, Expert. Wind Escape Wind Slicing, Expert. Vacuum Series, Elite. Shen Feng Wying, Proficient. 3 Color Domineering, Elite. Illusion, Elite. Sealing Technique, Expert. Navy 6 Forms, Elite. Return of Life, Expert. Items. Indestructible wooden knife, some fine steel kumai, some military food pills, some detonating charms, Sombra mask, healing potion, Zhuge Liang's feather fan, Hulk's underwear, Gandalf's wand. Task. Smash the attack of Wuyan, Yanyan, Union Village. Reward, 100,000 points, unfinished. Hearing the cheers from outside the tent, my tense heart relaxed a little. At least I led them to victory this time and fulfilled the promise I made when I left the village. In the boundless night, singing and dancing sounded from the entire Konoha camp, and the bonfires were dotted like stars. A few days later. Thank you Sand Hidden Village for supporting us Konoha. Danzo looked at the truckloads of supplies with a smile on his face. What he saw on paper was different from what he saw in reality. This time, he could fight the battle freely. And Sand Hidden Village, which has lost these things, has no strength to invade the border for the time being, and there is no worries in the rear. It's okay, our Sand Hidden Village and Konoha are friends. The Sand Hidden Ninja who came to the dock looked at the supplies, his heart seemed to be bleeding, and he replied through gritted teeth. These are all the wealth accumulated by Cheyenne Village with great difficulty. Now there is really no hope of attacking Konoha, so they can only hide in that desert. But looking at the happy faces of Sand Shinobi, he felt that it was worth it. At least he saved countless families of Sand Yin and brought back peace. The two looked at each other, and shouted at Konoha, Sand Yinja in the distance. Brothers, go home. All of them burst into laughter at the long-awaited words. This time, regardless of their camp, they embraced the people around them one by one, even if they were enemies facing each other before. Slowly, everyone was divided into 2 groups. One team returned to their barren but warm hometown, while the other team went to a new round of battlefields, also for their warm home. The long line of people walked towards Konoha with thick dust. Tell me, can those Konoha ninjas defeat Mist Ninja? Sure. If it's under the leadership of that man. The 2 sand ninjas walking at the end of the line turned their heads to look at the Konoha ninja who had already reached the horizon, discussing quietly. I made up my mind that in the future, I must never meet the Konoha ninja led by Danzo again. Under the command of this terrifying man, they have become blood-hungry devils one by one, and mortals cannot defeat them. Looking at Muya village, which was already faintly visible in the distance, they were all beaming with joy. Konoha village. We're back. After experiencing life and death, they all have a deeper nostalgia for their families. Their families have already occupied the entrance of the village densely, standing on tiptoes one by one, watching the team returning from afar. The team gradually entered the village, familiar people embraced and went home, children called their parents' names, wives gently adjusted the collar of their husbands who had returned from the expedition, and elderly parents were supported by healthy children. As the line became smaller and smaller, people who hadn't waited for the person in their eyes sat slumped on the ground, looking at the ashes at the end of the line with bloodless faces. Weeping and rushing forward, looking for the final destination of their relatives, Danzo stood beside him with his head bowed. Although the war was won, some people would never come back. The numb people came to Danzo holding the ashes urn, and he closed his eyes to prepare for the scolding of these mourners. After waiting for a long time, the expected scene was not ushered in. Instead, the family members of the martyrs knelt down with tears in their eyes. Thank you for being able to get them back to their home. In the battlefield, the heart that was not flustered in the face of thousands of troops began to panic at this moment. He hurriedly helped them up, feeling that he deserved it. Not only did he fail to bring back all the people who went out from the expedition, but on the contrary. After helping them up, Danzo took the off-white sackcloth and put it on himself, and followed the sad people to the cemetery. After handing the battle report to the ninja beside him, he personally took a knife and accompanied those people to carve the list of victims on the heroic monument. The names of the martyrs who died in the battle were engraved one by one. Although their families were sad, they puffed up their chests. This is the honor that the martyrs fought for. They can't lose their morale. The sky in the martyrs' cemetery was gray, and the drizzle was dripping down. The color of the sky mixed with the color of the clothes of the people on the ground. There were fewer and fewer people in the martyrs' cemetery until late at night. Only Danzo alone and white lilies were left in the empty cemetery. With a piece of grass in his mouth, he stared blankly at the heroic tablet he had carved with his own hands. He couldn't help but wonder what he was thinking about. Suddenly, a few children's calls came from the quiet cemetery. Brother Danzo. Danzo followed the prestige, and saw Jiraiya and the three of them looking around, shouting constantly. Seeing them coming to him, he shook his head, cleared the messy thoughts in his mind, put on his smile again, got up and waved in their direction. Hey, you little bastards, I'm here. When they heard Danzo's voice, their eyes lit up and they ran over quickly. Among them, Zilaya ran the fastest. After a while, there were two little guys hanging on Danzo's body, Jiraiya on the left and Tsunade on the right. Only Orochimaru stood in front of him obediently. But he looked at his two little friends, with envy in his eyes from time to time, and he stood there awkwardly. Danzo looked into his eyes and smiled, squatted down slightly and picked him up. With his current strength, it is not too easy to hold these three little guys. Why did you come here? Aren't you afraid? He let the three of them play around with him, and when he walked out of the cemetery, he put them down and looked around. It was pitch black, only the street lamps were emitting dim light, so he couldn't help asking them this question curiously. Why are you afraid? Aren't they all heroes who defend the village? Jiraiya looked around and asked with a puzzled expression. Tsunade frantically nodded his little head, and echoed. Yes, my second grandfather also said that they are all great heroes in the village. Orochimaru also agreed with his face. He only felt a burst of peace of mind here, as if no one could hurt himself here. Hearing the answers of the three young people, Danzo was a little bit astonished, then grinned happily, and the messy thoughts he was thinking just now suddenly became clear. Yes, why are you afraid? They are all the cutest people in the village. Even if their souls return to the Pure Land, they will protect the village they are thinking of. Smiling, he touched the heads of the three of them, looked at them with relief, and said with relief, yes, they are all heroes in the village. 1, and 3 all talked and laughed all the way back to the Jikun tribe, the home they hadn't returned for many days. Squeak. The courtyard door was slowly pushed open, and the first thing that came into view was a clean courtyard, which was often cleaned by someone. Shimura Kinyi, who was wearing home clothes, was cleaning the entrance with a rag. Hearing the sound of the door being pushed, he raised his already extremely beautiful face, and a few strands of hair hung down, like willow branches floating by the river in summer. After seeing the comber clearly, a pair of eyes as clear as water showed a deep joy that anyone could see. Standing up slowly, feeling something was wrong, she lowered her head shyly and combed the strands of hair behind her already red and disfigured ears. Brother Danzing, you're back. Mustering up the courage, he raised his reddish face and said softly to Danzing. Yes. When the two looked at each other, it seemed that there were thousands of amorous feelings that they wanted to tell. It seemed that only the bright moon, the breeze, you, and me were left in this world. The three little ones climbed down from Danzo silently, stood on the edge of the yard, scratched their own heads, and looked puzzled at what the two of them wanted to say, but Tsunade and Orochimaru beside them tightly covered their mouths. The distance between the two was getting closer, and at this moment, the sound of chaotic footsteps came from the house. A figure appeared at the entrance, looked at Danzo Shimura standing next to his sister in surprise, and yelled out. Ah! Danzo-san is back. The sound immediately made the two people who were very close to each other stiff, and then separated as if nothing had happened. Shimura Dingtai didn't care about anything else, and ran forward to give Danzo a big bear hug, without noticing the black lines on the faces of several people around him. After the hug, he turned his head, looked at his sister's red face, and asked curiously, Sister, what's wrong with you? Why are you so red? Blush with a hammer, I'll cook. Shimura Kinyi rolled his eyes at him, stomped his feet in embarrassment, and walked into the house without looking back after telling Danzo. Shimura Dingtai couldn't figure out her reaction. Looking at his sister's back strangely, he murmured, Girls are really strange, and I didn't do anything. You say so, brother Danzo. Seeing that there was no response for a long time, I couldn't help but say it again. Brother Danzo. After turning his head, he saw that Danzo had already bypassed him and walked into the house, which made him even more puzzled. Hey, who kicked me? There was a sudden pain in the calf, and when he looked down, he saw Tsunade kicking him and muttering something. Idiot. After a while, pain came from the calf on the other side, and Orochimaru also kicked him, but this time he heard what he said clearly. Suddenly, he felt a burst of coolness coming from behind him, and when he turned his head to look, he saw Zhi Nai also eagerly looking at his position, which made him clamp his legs unconsciously, and couldn't help saying with a little bit of grievance. What the hell are you going to do? But when he saw Zhi Nai, he touched his nose, and said with the same curiosity as him. I don't know, but I want to try after seeing that they are doing this. The two squatted in the yard looking at the brightly lit room, and fell into deep doubts together. Do you still want to eat? Come here soon. After a while, the door of the room was pushed open, and Tsunade, who was wearing a small apron, pinched his waist and shouted to the two who were thinking about life. The smell of the food wafting from the room suddenly aroused the greediness of the two of them, and their stomachs started to growl. Shimura Dingtai and Jilai also looked at each other. They both saw the same meaning in each other's eyes, and nodded in agreement. No matter what his problem is, the sky is big and the earth is big, and eating is the biggest. The next day. Naruto building. The battle reports of the 4 outer defense lines were divided into 2, one was sent to Hokage, where it was processed, and the other was sent back to Konoha as a backup. As a disciple of Hokage and the commander of a defense line, Danzo is naturally qualified to check. After passing one after another verification, I came to the reference room under Konoha. This can be said to be the most important place for Konoha. I slid my fingers across the rows of bookshelves, and after confirming the direction, I walked straight there. The latest battle reports have already filled a row of bookshelves. With a pinch of the handprint, several shadow clones appeared on the spot along with the smoke, and one of them walked to the desk with a stack of battle reports. Danzo kept flipping through stacks of battle reports, but his face became more and more ugly. The war situation was even worse than he had imagined. He thought that Konoha would be able to relax a lot after he stabilized the sand-hidden line, but the remaining 3 lines of defense, no matter which side they are on, cannot be said to be very stable. On the Iwagakure line of defense, Konoha's side is composed of Senju Tobirama, Sarutobi Hiruzen and some small ninjas. Under his plan, Awahiro has been defeated repeatedly, and the number of ninjas has been continuously reduced. But they have been defeated repeatedly, entangled the second Hokage like a stick of brown candy, especially the bandaged man Tsuchikage Mew, who has developed a big killer like Dust Dun. It is powerful, has a wide range, and can fly. It is almost like a hack. It is recommended to seal the title on such a large-scale battlefield. If Qian Shubajian didn't go up and use the Flying Thunder God technique to divert his dust escape, I am afraid that many Konoha ninjas would die under the elimination of his blood successor. You must know that in the 4th Ninja World War, as long as there is enough chakra, even Susanoo's defense can be easily disintegrated. It can only be said that this is a battle of 13 rooms. Union's defense line and Jinzhao Yinzhao are not fuel-efficient lamps. Although Jinzhao Yinzhao has not obtained the 6 ninja tools, but with their close cooperation, their strength is comparable to that of the strong in the shadow class. Only Konoha's pig-deer butterfly combination can block them, and the ninjas in this line of defense can be said to be Konoha's most backbone force. The patriarchs of the Uchiha clan and the Hyuga clan went into battle together. In addition, most of the ninjas of the Yumi, Inuzuka, and other ninja clans were also active on that line of defense. Even if this is the case, it can barely block the attack from Union. Not to mention taking out some ninjas to support the hidden fog defense line, it would be nice to be able to stabilize it. The Wuyin defense line is the hardest to defend. If not for the assistance of Wuyin village, it can be said that it has been completely defeated. The defense line retreated again and again, retreating from the original coastal defense line to the eastern fringe city of the Fire Kingdom. Whether it is the top combat power or the number of ninjas, Konoha is not dominant. Even according to the recent battle report, if the village does not send support, then Konoha may lose the first city since the war started. Just looking at the data on paper, he felt that Konoha would end sooner or later. I really don't know how my teacher worked with them for 2 full years under such extreme circumstances. What's even more outrageous is that he won. Putting down the last battle report, disarming the shadow clone, all the battlefield information appeared in Danzo's mind, constantly sorting out the classification and arrangement, and filtering out the ones that are useful to him. After comparing the battlefield data, ideas emerged one by one. Countless plans appeared in his mind, built, overturned, and built again. The street lamps on the ground came on one by one. In the darkness of the reference room, Danzo slowly let out a mouthful of stale air, and his eyes burst out with unprecedented light. In this war, Konoha is not hopeless. It's just that the Konoha ninjas who have just retreated from the battlefield are afraid that they will go to a new round of the battlefield again. Slowly walked out of the reference room, nodded to the guarding Anbu ninja, said hello, turned around and walked to the Hokage building on the ground. He still has a lot of things to do, the next material logistics, marching route, and battle plan. During this period, everyone in the village can rest, except him. Now every minute and every second is extremely precious. Under the dim light of the street lamps, Danzo's shadow stretched very long, and only his footsteps echoed softly in the empty streets. In the dark land of the Shimura clan, only one house was still dimly lit. Shimura Jinyi and Xiao Zilai were also sitting at the entrance, resting their chins on their hands, staring blankly at the door. As Konoha Jamanen, her parents also went to the front line because of the war, and her eldest brother also had a lot of work and often stayed out at night, so he simply lived in Danzo's house directly, so that he could take care of the young Jiraiya by the way. And Jilai has been dozing off non-stop, his head is shaking little by little, and when he is about to fall asleep, he stubbornly opens his eyes wide to wake himself up. Wei Wei yawned, squinted his eyes and looked at Shimura Jinyi, who was still in good spirits, and asked curiously, Sister Jinyi, why hasn't brother Danzo come back? She turned her head and touched Jiraiya's head, and said softly, Brother Danzo, he is doing very important things, we can't disturb him. Zilai on the side also nodded half understanding, then can we help brother Danzo? Yes, as long as you become a strong ninja, you can help. Shimura Jinyi looked up at the stars in the sky, clenched his fists, and the light blue chakra flowed in her body. Brother Danzo, you can block those wolves on the front line, Konoha, I will protect it. Judging from the chakra fluctuations all over her body, her strength is obviously good, and now she also plays an indispensable role in Konoha Hospital. She has mastered the medical ninjutsu learned from Danzo, and many ninjas who have been injured on the battlefield have regained their combat capabilities with her help. The moon in the sky is gradually passing by. Jiraiya beside him also squinted his eyes and drooled, apparently in a deep sleep. Shimura Kinyi jumped onto the roof, looked at the shimmering Hokage building in the distance, with a hint of distress in his eyes, and sighed softly. He jumped down again, and walked into the room holding Xiao Zilai who was sleeping soundly. With the extinguishing of the lights in this room, only the Hokage building in the middle of the huge Konoha village is still awake. After a night of thinking, I finally sorted out the plan roughly, and my whole head was dizzy. Just a draft was overturned by Danzo, and it was rebuilt countless times. It was not until I felt that there were no mistakes that I gave it to the think tanks for revision. This concerns many families and must be foolproof. Thinking of the appearance of the family members of the martyrs who lost their loved ones when they came back, I couldn't help but feel a twitch in my heart. All kinds of thoughts were swirling in Danzo's mind, and when he came back to his senses, he had already arrived at the door of his own house. Through the courtyard door, he noticed a person sitting at the entrance, dozing continuously. Although my heart is warm, this is not good, I shook my head helplessly. This girl must have been waiting here for me all night again. Gently pushed open the courtyard door, walked in slowly, looked at the girl in front of her, lowered her body and whispered in her ear. It's been a long time. A familiar voice sounded beside Shimura Jinyi's ears, and she opened her eyes in surprise, but after sitting for too long, her feet were a little weak, and she couldn't stand for a while. When she was about to fall, Danzo had already stood in front of her, feeling as if her whole body had been lifted into the air. It turned out that Danzo hugged her whole body, she struggled slightly, her face turned red all of a sudden, and even her earlobes were dyed pink. The girl Qingxi hung down like a waterfall, her pink arms gently wrapped around Danzo's neck, her red face buried into his chest, and she whispered, "No." The morning sun shone on the pair of them, as if they were covered with a layer of golden light. At this time, Danzo only had eyes on the person in his arms. Fool. Let's go. Go to sleep first, next time. Don't wait so late. Shimura Jinyi raised his head again, His face was flushed with embarrassment, and he said stubbornly, "You are the fool, I didn't." "Okay. Okay. If you don't have it, you don't have it." Danzing smiled helplessly, with only pampering for her in his tone. "Aha." After hearing him change his words, she proudly raised her head, looking like a winner. The two smiled at each other. "That's right. I just want to protect the thousands of lovely people in the village, and I can't let them get hurt in the slightest. Isn't this the reason why I am willing to say goodbye to my dear one for a while, to drive away the wolves with my life? The time together is always short." After all the plans had been assessed, the busy preparations began again. All the ninjas who had just reunited with their families for a few days packed their bags again. When the announcement came out, they rushed to the military field immediately. No one flinched because of reluctance or fear. Because this is their home. Similarly, they, who had experienced victory, deeply believed that that man would successfully lead them to beat back the wolves again. Many acquaintances greeted each other before Danzing came. "Hey, Kuroda, are you still alive?" a dark man said to a man with a scar on his face. The man named Kuroda scolded him with a smile, and said, "Fuck you, you can't spit out ivory. How are you going home these days?" "Hey, okay, don't you know that the woman at home is so eager to give me all the good things in the house?" He smiled at the corner of his mouth, patted the backpack behind him, and showed off to Kuroda. "That's it, let me tell you, I'm about to become a father. The last time I went to Cheyenne, my family checked out that there was a child when I left. I'll wait until I come back next time. Ha ha ha." Kuroda glanced at his backpack slightly, and said disdainfully, "You bastard, you are really enviable." He suddenly felt that the backpack behind him was not fragrant, and his tone was sour. At this moment, Danzo walked into the military field with a wooden knife on his waist. There were already dozens of shallow knife marks on the armor, which not only did not destroy the original beauty, but added a few points of domineering. When they saw him appear, the originally noisy military field fell silent in an instant. Everyone raised their heads and looked at Danzo enthusiastically. This is the man they were following. "Brothers, first of all I want to say sorry to you all. You haven't had a good rest for a few days, going to the battlefield again. To say goodbye to the ones I cherish, I have to leave this familiar plant and tree again." After finishing the sentence, Danzo lowered his head slightly and bowed to everyone in the audience. After being slightly stunned, they burst into tears instantly. As dignified Hokage disciples, the most prestigious person in Konoha's younger generation now cares about each of them. In my heart, I am more sure that Danzo is someone worthy of their followers. Report your intentions on the golden platform, and lead Yulong to die for you. Danzo raised his head again and looked at them seriously. But, again, we have no retreat from the beginning. Only fight. 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 He picked up the knife pinned to his waist, raised it high above his head, and shouted. "Kill." Everyone shouted at the same time, and the voice shook the sky, shaking away the thick dark clouds over the military deployment platform. A ray of bright sunlight shone through the cracks, and it happened to shine on Danzo, who was holding a knife, as if he was destined by fate. The light radiating from his body gave the ninjas who were about to go out a lot of confidence. The ninjas bid farewell to their relatives one by one with a smile on their faces. In fact, they understood that the battle with Kirigakure was more difficult than the front line of Sangakure. At least, although it is difficult to hide the front line in the sand, the front line position has not been lost. If they go this time, they probably won't be able to come back, but if they have a choice, they all want to stay at home with their families, but as their conductor said, they don't have a choice. The distance between the Eastern Front and Konoha village is not too far, and they arrived successfully after 2 days of long-distance raid by the Renmin. All the civilians I saw along the way ran to the central town of Fire Nation with their families. Although the unspoken rule of the ninja world is not to slaughter civilians, how can red-eyed ninjas care about this? As civilians, they can't afford to gamble. In such a huge flow of people, only they went upstream and went to the front line where the civilians were desperately fleeing. "Dad, didn't you say that there are bad people going to our house? So where are those uncles going?" A little girl sitting in a donkey cart raised her somewhat dirty face, looked at Konoha Zongren passing by them, and asked curiously. The man driving the car looked at the well-equipped ninjas, and smiled again on his haggard face. "They are going there to fight off the bad guys and take back our home." The little girl couldn't help showing admiration when she heard the words, and suddenly stood up and shouted at them. Uncles, come on. Beat all those bad guys away. A Konoha ninja passing by her turned around and nodded solemnly. Don't worry, we will. That pulls the hook. The little girl stretched out her little finger and said seriously. He froze for a moment, then stretched out his finger with a smile, and hooked her finger. Okay, pull the hook. The two people, one big and one small, reached an agreement with each other here.